Here, come switch places. Oh, there you go. Check one, two, three. I think it's loud enough.
Rick, it's all right. Good morning.
Morning.
Let me say that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, everybody is awake. Well, thank y'all for being here for our inaugural meeting of the Blue Ribbon Commission, looking at the licensing division of the Secretary of State and some issues that we've been made aware of. So, Speaker Burns and Lieutenant Governor Jones set up this committee, commission to look at the agency, and I appreciate them reacting to the many concerns that we have heard and been approached with by our constituents. And it's encompassed pretty much all the different licensing committees. So I appreciate them setting this up and putting their stamp of approval to look at everything. That being said, I'd like to ask those that are here. Some of them are members of the committee, some are members of the legislature. If you want to start down there and introduce yourself. But before that, we're going to start the day off as we do every day in the legislature with prayer. And I'd like to ask Danny if he wouldn't open us up with prayer.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for letting us be here today to discuss the issues of the licensing in Georgia. This affects everyone in Georgia in a lot of ways. It affects us all. These are the people that make money for Georgia. And we just ask that we would be guided in the right ways to solve some of the problems and help the workers that are at the Secretary of State's office to do a better job and help them in their quest to make this state the best. Father, we thank you for that. Bless everyone that's here. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Danny, if you'd like to start and just introduce yourself and what district you represent, any concerns you'd like to state.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Danny Mathis. I represent, now it's District 133. It was 144, it was 149, but now I'm 133. So I'm glad to still be here with all those numbers. But this is something that's been passionate to all of us over the last year or so with the Georgia license. I've been in business, in the funeral business, for 54 years. And sometimes we would run into issues, and I think some of the issues can be solved. I really do. And I know with new technology, things are made, but I hope that we can get back to the type of issues of where we give customer service. And I think if we can get back to that and make sure that we treat the folks that are trying to get licensed with a certain type of respect and that they're due, and I feel like we can do that. There's some wonderful people that work for the state, Secretary of State's Office and Licensing Board, and I just want to sit here and work with them to try to make sure we make it easy for folks to be in business, stay in business, and be certified like they should be. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of our state. I'm Karen Mathiak. I represent 74 right now, soon to be 82 with all of our new districting. I'm also a chiropractor. I sat on the licensing board for a number of years before I became a legislator. I agree. Yes, I think that we can reach some great changes. I think that it's just one step at a time. I want to protect the public. That's what these licensing boards are here for, is to protect the public. And I think that's the most important issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. I'm Brian Prince, state representative for House District 132, which is parts of Augusta and all of Jefferson County. So a little metro and a little rural, so I get it from both ends on that side. But I'm looking forward to it. I worked last year with the Secretary of State on the licensing board panel, and again, there are some issues out there that I'm looking forward to addressing, either through legislation or fiscal. Thank you.
And I want to apologize for not letting the co-chairman of this committee say a few words before I started having everybody else say a few words. Senator Tillery,
Oh,
Sorry about that. Just had to say that.
Oh, don't worry. I'll get my licks in the budget next year. Thank you all for being here. We know that this committee, that you came first of all out on a weekday when you otherwise would be working because it's affecting your business and your life. And so thank you for taking that time to be here. It obviously has to be majorly important to you if you were willing to take that time away from your family and your job. So please know that's not lost on us. I also want to just let you know a little bit more about us. Most of us are small business owners ourselves. We also have to go through the same licensing process you go through yourself. So when you're frustrated, trust me, we're frustrated, and our cell phones are going off because other people are frustrated. We want to answer those frustrations in a way that is appropriate for Georgia, especially when Georgians are paying the bill. We look forward to having a deeper discussion with Secretary of State's office. Appreciate their attendance today. Know that means that they want to address this as well, and also let you know that this isn't a Georgia-centric problem. National publications that came out even this week are talking about state legislatures across the nation that are looking at addressing licensing whole hog. My hope is that we can get a better grasp of what we may have licensed in the past that we don't need to anymore. There are things that we probably should change on. Why would you want to be licensing things that in 1950 may have mattered, but maybe they don't matter so much in 2024? There may be some new things we do need to consider, and there may be some lighter steps we can take other than licensing overall. You've seen the move generally outside of the licensing by professions themselves lately. We want to study that and make sure we're aware of that too. While I expect complaints are what bring folks to meetings like this. And we know that the complaints will make the meetings be tough and not always enjoyable. That is fine. Bring those complaints. This is where we want to resolve them, and you're going to have people here from the Secretary of State's office who I know are committed to resolving them while they're here too. While I expect all that, I do want to start off on one bright spot, at least for me, this morning. Back behind you right here, you'll see a lady, Miss Jessie Claire Churchwell. She's the daughter of one of our Senate staffers. She had major brain surgery just weeks ago at Stanford University. She looks awesome. She's a high school student in Paulding County and ran 5 miles with getting ready for a cross-country team meet next year already this week. And to have such a miraculous recovery, it tells me that there is a God in this world. So we're just glad you're with us. Thank you, Jesse, for being here. Why you would want to be here, we don't know, but we're glad that you are here. I also want to say thank you to a couple of people, Charlie Barrett, who's out here in the audience, helped us arrange this place here in Macon, and Middle Georgia State University, President Blake and Ember Bishop, who really went above and beyond to make sure that this facility was ready for the people who we knew would come based on the topic that we were addressing. So thank you all for being here today. Turn it over to my other Senate colleagues.
Good morning. Welcome to Middle Georgia. I'm Larry Walker. I represent Senate District 20, which is just south of here. I have 8 counties across Middle Georgia. I live in Houston County. So I'm going on my 9th year of being in the legislature. Of the constituent complaint calls that I get or constituent, requests for help that I get, a large majority or a large percentage of those are related to licensure. So I became interested in this a couple of years ago. Got some real good information at ALEC conference. Asked the Lieutenant Governor to let me have a study committee in the Senate last summer to look at this, and we had a very productive study committee. A lot of good legislation came out of that study committee. And working with the House, we got several things passed. I greatly appreciate the Speaker Burns being with us today, and appreciate him and the Lieutenant Governor appointing this Blue Ribbon Commission to look at this, recognizing the issue as being important to Georgians. The Lieutenant Governor and really, we were not coordinating our efforts, but he had the red tape rollback as one of his priorities last session, and so a lot of my legislation fit right in with that, and so he and his team were incredibly supportive of my work. We have too many licenses in Georgia, in my opinion. I believe we have 42 under the Secretary of State's office. That's 42 independent licensure boards. That's a lot of bureaucracy, y'all. We have other licenses in other agencies that I hope this committee will have time to look at too, that do not fall under the professional occupational licensing boards under the Secretary of State. One of the bigger ones that I get calls on, and I get several a month, is our composite medical board as it relates to nurse protocol agreements. So you have a nurse licensing board that licenses the nurses, and then you have the composite medical board that licenses physicians, but the composite medical board has to approve the nurse protocol agreement, and that can take 6, 9 months, sometimes, over a year, get that done. And we have a healthcare workforce shortage. So if we have time, Chairman, I hope we can maybe delve into that a little bit too. But my opinion is, if the state, and this has been upheld by the Georgia Supreme Court, if the state does not have a compelling interest to require a license for people to work, meaning public safety, as has been mentioned, or consumer protection, if the state doesn't have a compelling interest in those areas, I think we ought not to charge somebody a fee and require them to jump through all these hoops to earn a living. I mean, I just think that's against my conservative beliefs and our liberty, and so I think there's some areas where we can look at eliminating some licensure. I hope. Thank you for allowing me to express my thoughts on that, and I look forward to our work here.
Thank you. I'm Senator Rick Williams. I'm finishing my 8th year in the legislature. I've served 6 in the House, and just finished my first term as a senator. And I have 7 counties. I'm Senate District 25. I'm not as old as Danny Mathis. I've not served 54 years. I've only been licensed 51 years, professional license, but I've also experienced a lot of issues with some of the state boards. They've gotten away from protecting the public and they're protecting the profession. They're creating obstacles and getting people licensed. When the legislature passes a law twice and the state board still does not follow the intent of the legislature, then we have a major problem. If these state boards are out of control and they're practicing law and they're practicing writing laws themselves rather than following the laws that we're passing, and it's time to tear down those barriers so we can get more people to work in the state of Georgia and make it easier to get their license. I think the governor and the legislature, we passed a bill where veterans moving to Georgia, their spouses, if they hold professional license in another state, then they're accelerated through to get their license here in Georgia. Well, some of the barriers that some of these professions hold will prevent that. So we've got to get that straightened out. I'm glad to be here and want to work hard to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you all. Well, this time we are honored to have Speaker John Burns with us this morning. And with that, we'll ask him to come up and say what he's got to say.
Have the speaker come speak.
Well, good morning.
One.
Thank you for all of you being here and taking your time to be here. It's important that you're part of this process. So 2 guys on the end of the panel, it's always good to see again and again the last guy who's going to let me down. So one of you will. So appreciate you guys, but all the members of this blue ribbon panel, I can tell by the comments we're going to have a very robust, productive conversation around licensure in this state, which is that's our charge, that's your charge, and that's our charge as representatives that represent the people of Georgia. I want to thank Ember and for her hospitality, and certainly President Blake in allowing us to come to this facility and enjoy their great hospitality here, and certainly a great venue for us and for you guys to meet in on your first meeting. So in Middle Georgia, Mr. Chairman, so we're glad always to be in Middle Georgia, both of you on this end. And I mean, you guys are lucky. Y'all have a district. Y'all could not have had a district. You know, y'all complaining about the numbers. But just kidding. Just kidding. You know, and we're glad to see Gabe and Maggie here to hear this conversation and be a part of it. It's important that we join with Secretary Raffensperger as we look to, I think what the charge is from that I believe that you have from Lieutenant Governor Jones and myself is that we look at the issues, we look at the facts, we look at the concerns that Georgians have that have been expressed directly to you guys, your office, directly to us, and we look at how we solve those issues. And I believe we solve those by considering all the facts, the good, the bad, and the concerning. And then we move forward with what we should do in state government, and that's work together. Let's not be siloed in your office or in the House or the Senate, that we work together. And I'm confident with this group of good people that we're going to do just that. Very confident of that. You know, excuse me, small businesses across this state and across this country are the lifeblood of our country. They're the lifeblood of our economy here in Georgia and our success story here in Georgia. But without an educated, licensed workforce where the licensure is required, then we have a problem. We will no longer remain the number one place in this country to do business, and our quality of life for our citizens will decline. I'm committed, Lieutenant Governor Jones is, and this panel is committed to ensuring that we address those issues, and we address them in the proper manner. Whether it's someone trying to renew or obtain an occupational license or a professional license, they deserve no less as Georgians, as taxpayers, than be treated with great customer service. And that's with anyone in state government, whether it's in our offices or y'all's office, with Secretary of State, DNR, whomever that may be. They deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and with a sense of trying to solve the issue, solve the problem, to ensure that their efforts are rewarded with a simple renewal or a granting of a license if they've jumped through all of the hoops. And I think we'll do just that here. I know that I have personally, and my office has received numerous complaints, as other members of the legislature have. It's probably the number one issue that we hear, for the most part. But we want to come here in a sense of joining with you to solve this problem. What we can do from a policy perspective, as we've addressed in the past, or from an appropriations perspective. And that's part of what we do, is part of how we should be working together. We want to identify these issues. We want to implement solutions. I know all of these people sitting on this panel are problem solvers. I've seen them all at work. I've seen Rick at work in the House and in the Senate, and Larry. And I know that Blake and Matt are problem solvers, because they do that year round with the budget. So thank you for that. Brian, Karen, and Danny, thank you. I know that you all get it. Y'all understand the issues here. If we're going to continue to be the best place to live, work, and raise a family, and treat hardworking Georgians with great respect, as we should, then I'm very much looking forward to the cooperation between the legislative branch and the executive branch to get this right. And time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. In fact, it's past time. So let's get down to work. I appreciate y'all's service every day, and appreciate y'all's dedication and your efforts here to look at the facts, make some decisions, and then let's get it done. So we're here to support you. If I can be of service in my office, Keith is here, and we'll be more than glad to do whatever we can do to help facilitate the work of this great Blue Ribbon panel. And thank you all for your willingness to serve, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, again, thank you for those words and for that charge. And again for entrusting Senator Tillery and I in trying to do what you just stated. So, so just a little bit of housekeeping to let you know how this will flow today. We're going to hear from the Secretary of State's office. I've told Gabe that he's got as long as he wants, and then we'll ask questions, and then we'll allow those of you that are here in the audience that do want to speak to be heard. And if you are in the audience and do want to be heard, we've got a sign-up sheet over here on the table. It's at some point this morning if you'll sign up so we don't miss you. You know, as a legislator, when we hear from constituents with issues like those that we hear from concerns with the licensure committees, it's usually the constituent is at the point of frustration, a lot of frustration. And I know that, and I know my colleagues up here, when we hear from them, they're, as I say, they're at their wits' end. So that's when we get to get involved. And to me, that's the most pleasurable part of our job is being able to help our constituents and see something through to the end, and know that you have been of service to your voters. And in the last few weeks, I don't know if it's because they know we're having this meeting or not, I've received multiple emails, and I know that Maggie with the department thinks I've been baiting her and getting people to send me things, but I want to, before I turn it over to the Secretary of State's office, I want to basically read a quote that I received permission from the person that sent me this to read and acknowledge. And it's from Miss Beth Brigden of Lincolnton. She shared with me an issue with her daughter's licensure issues with the physical therapist license, and her correspondence to me that I think is ultimate task at hand, and I asked for her permission to quote her. So here it is. Here she said this: I pray that they, Secretary of State's office, have not lost sight of the current backlog and will address how they are dealing with that even before they report on their longer term plans. I support planning to methodically address what seems to be a myriad of issues, their root causes, and ultimately crafting the solutions to remedy each of those. But we need a SWAT team approach, an all hands on deck approach, if you will, to respond to the immediate issues while we also have a team focused on the longer term solutions. Else, I fear that we may be in for weeks or months of professionals caught in this devastating limbo. And I'll close with just saying the people that need licenses are a large portion of our economy, and we need to act like it. So with that being said, Gabe, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and co-chairman and speaker for setting the tone on this. And what you're feeling is what we're feeling. I want to go over several things that are happening historically, currently, and future set. And I am aware of the amount of time and effort and energy each of y'all have done with your regular jobs y'all have, plus this almost level of volunteer work that is so important with the huge paychecks that y'all get being state legislators. And the secretary appreciates the opportunity for us to present here and kind of lay a foundation so you can see the things we're dealing with, because it's a team effort, as the speaker pointed out, legislative and executive together to serve the people of Georgia. And the secretary is a small business owner, his wife's a small business owner. I've lived in the world of small business for my 30 years of a career, other than the last few years here, but I've been proud to serve as the director of licensing of PLB since January of 21. And I've been speaking to legislators and lobbyists and licensees and the governor's office. I think there's 100% alignment of what we want. We want a Chick-fil-A level of customer service with the applicants and licensees being at the core of that. That's what we want. We want it to be easy. We want it to be safe.
As Senator Walker pointed out, we have sort of a redoubled focus on the fact that with the Supreme Court coming out of the lactation consultants case, that if it is not health and safety related, there is no constitutional basis for a board or a rule or even a law at that point. I added one other thing to that, is financial protections, which is the third leg of the stool for licensing. And one of the things we want to try to get to as a baseline is another section of Secretary of State's office with securities. And we license all the financial planners and people like that, about 300,000 licenses annually. We have 5 employees to do that. It is administrative. It is, did you pass your test and are you a criminal? If it's yes and no, here's your license. Analysts don't even look at it. That's where we need to get to with professional licensing boards, with composite medical boards, with the accountancy, all these things that are out there. We need to make the licensure administrative as much as we can. Because one thing people don't understand, I get calls about this, I'm sure y'all do. Well, just tell the board to do this. Secretary of State's office, tell the board to do that. We can't tell a board to do anything. They are the issuer of the license. We are there to provide administrative support. And there's some misconception around that because, you know, the secretary's name is on the building down there. And that's where the staff is that supports the boards and the licensees. So let me just go to the first slide, which is basically our mission is to get Georgians to work. That is the plan. And the focus on the needs of the applicants and licensees, while at the same time taking seriously our efforts to protect the health, safety, and financial security of the public. That's kind of the baseline for everything that we do. Let's just go over who are those licensees? What are they? In healthcare, we've got healthcare one, we've got dietitians, dispensing opticians, hearing aid, optometry, professional counselors, social workers, marriage counselors, psychology, speech pathology, and audiology. That's healthcare one. And one of the statutory issues we have with healthcare one, this isn't a rule, statute. They have to look at every application, whether it's complete, incomplete, never going to get through or not. They have to go through a board meeting to look at them. That's the way the law is written right now. That's one of our big issues with them because that slows us down. Healthcare two is athletic trainers, massage therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, podiatry, and veterinary medicine. And I think some of y'all probably heard me tell the story before that there was at one point before we were in office where they never got a quorum at the veterinary medicine board. So there was a guy who had passed his test, graduated from school, had a job, but couldn't work for 6 months. They didn't have a quorum to get the license through. And that was sort of the baseline of our thought on one of the bills was going through, I think it was HB 184, that would have said, if a board doesn't move on a complete light application in 60 days, the director has the ability to issue the license. I think that would have done two things. It would have moved things along and also would have changed the behavior of some of these boards and made them, because when somebody said to me, he said, well, some of these boards only meet quarterly. I said, well, maybe they should meet more often if they want to get people licensed. And that's kind of our goal on this. Healthcare 3 is our largest group. We'll go over some of these numbers. That's licensed practical nurses, music therapy, and registered professional nurses. That is obviously huge for our state. It is important. Right now, we are not where we want to be in terms of the days, but the average, once they complete applications, and the average turnaround time is 18 days on a nurse right now. We want to get it down to 10 business days where we can, but we're not there right now.
Can you say that again?
18 days
For what?
nurses. That's new applicant nurses. And we just had a graduating class right now. And one of the things you're going to hear about is people having to take their NCLEX tests. And by board rule, we cannot schedule them for a test until we get everything in on them. And that includes their transcripts. And one other one is their fingerprints checked for their background. We can get into the weeds on fingerprinting later because that's another one of those things where it's a cross-jurisdictional situation because people who handle that is the GBI. And they've changed vendors 3 times while we've been here. And I'll go over some more details about some things that can be administratively done. And they're already working on. We've been working with them, and our general counsel has been talking to their general counsel. We'll still go back to that. Maggie, don't let me forget this, okay? This, by the way, is Maggie Hasty from our office. I know that all of y'all have been dealing with her. She's our legislative director. Trades one falls under architect, interior design, And it's interior designer. That's not where to put throw pillows. This is for structural things inside a home. So that's why some people say, why do we license those right now? Chiropractic examiners. I didn't update this one. Engineers and land surveyors are their own now, and they have their own struggles going on. They're trying to transition to be their own standalone board. We have foresters and geologists and landscape architects. Trades 2, another one of our very large trades, and one's in renewal right now, is cosmetology and barbers, librarians. And people have asked a question about librarians. Why in the hell, what does that have to do with health and safety? The reality of it is there's federal law that says in order for libraries to get money, they have to have a licensed librarian. So maybe we should look at ways internally to license a librarian through just a simple registration. Something along those lines. Used car, motor vehicle dealers, used car, motor vehicle parts. Those are all in trades 2, and those are all relatively large. Trades 3 is athlete agents, auctioneers, funeral services that so many members of the committee are members of, long-term care facility administrators, private detectives, and security agencies. We have board members in the back over here, and water and wastewater boards. That's really important for all of your local jurisdictions who deal with water and wastewater. And there's basically 3 or 4 different levels. We're changing to a groundwater one now as well. So trades 4 is another very important one because we have a building and housing shortage in this state. And this is conditioned air, electrical contractors, low voltage, plumbers, utility, and residential and general contractors. And this is a board that's not in the new system yet, but is struggling in terms of one of the bigger issues around this one is, I said before, we want to make things administrative. This particular board, with the way the laws and rules are written, has a lot of subjective criteria that can be interpreted different ways. Like, what is a 2-story vertical? One of the things is 2 years of project management, and they get to decide, is it enough project management over the size of projects that you have? It's not like it has to be over 1 million square feet or anything like that. It's just, it's sort of, they read a letter and they kind of decide amongst themselves, is this enough? I'm simplifying it, but you get the idea. It's subjective. It's not binary. In order to issue licenses quickly, it needs to be binary, so that an analyst who we're paying $40,000 a year to can look at it and say, yes, this is done, or a computer can look at it and say, yes, this is done. Section 8 is sort of our registrations that have come up. They're relatively new. It's a small group, and it's done just internally by staff. There's not a board attached to them. That's immigration assistance and trauma scene waste management. Trauma scene waste management became a registration because there was issues where people passed away, there's violent crimes, and they were just taking bloody mattresses and throwing them in the landfills, things like that. And there was no registration or no way to hold these people accountable. So that was a new one that was only passed by the legislature, I think, in 2021. That's been a relatively new one for us. Here's the number. I want to show you the percentage of growth in licenses under Secretary Raffensperger's term. Healthcare 1, 30%. Healthcare 2, 15%. Healthcare 3, which includes nurses, is 38%. Trades 1 is only at 8%, but that was where we housed PELs, which is professional engineers and landscape architects. I'm sorry, land surveyors. I always do that. Trades 2, 14%. Trades 3 is down slightly, and trades 4, 9%. Section 8 is relatively small, so it's a big percentage number, but we're looking at 24% growth since Secretary Raffensperger was sworn in. So about 440,000 licenses to start, and 545,518 active licenses as of this morning. It's big, and we're going to talk some about this as we move forward. This is current active licenses. New licenses issued so far for FY24 is 40,771. Renewals issued is 215,667. Now, let me go back on one thing back here. You see 545,518. There are many licenses where there are multiple holders of the license. A lot of businesses and facilities, take a salon, you might have 2 or 3 partners. A used car facility, you might have 2 or 3 partners. So the number of human beings who are in this, in the new system, I can tell you that. In MLO, I can't. And MLO is the legacy system. All right. So this is where we stand right now. This is sort of the licensing group we have for the state. And culturally speaking, when Secretary Raffensperger came in, our people took care of the licenses. They didn't, they were trained to take care of the licenses. But now under the new system, we're trying to move some other items around to where it's focusing on the customer, because the customer can have multiple licenses, and we have, I'll go into this when I get to goals, but there's 4 functional areas where you can do any kind of reform. Administrative, which is us. Joint secretary or director rule, which is a pretty powerful tool, but it's a tool you want to use with care so that boards don't completely lose their minds, because we need them to be functional. The licensing board rules themselves, and then what y'all are in charge of, which is statute. And one that's not on there, that kind of pervades all this, and I note that the 2 co-chairmen, their other positions as being the appropriations chairs, is resourcing. And that's throughout this. So this was the resourcing we've seen over the last, basically since the end of Governor Kemp's term as secretary and secretary afterwards. Top line is the payments to the Treasury from PLB. So it was about, in 2018, a little less than 20 million, 2019, 21 million, 2020, almost 18 million, 2021, 23.5 million, 2022, 17.6 million, 2023, 28 million, 2024, we're not closed with that year yet, obviously. We have another few days in this fiscal year, so it'll be approximately around 19 million. In 2025, it has averaged all the previous years together to 2021, but you'll see it sort of goes up and down based on graduating classes and renewal times, because we did go on 2-year cycles for most of them. Now, the state funds to serve the applicants of licenses in those years were 8.5 million, 8.5 million, 8.4 million, 7.8 million, 8,274,000, 8,274,000. In 2024, we jumped up to about 9 million. And let me look at each and every one of you who voted for the budget and say thank you, because you got 1.4 million in there, which is going to give us some more FTEs and headcount, because that is one way to address some of the issues we've seen. And you'll see that it's running around 40% of the money the PLB brings in goes to taking care of the licensees and the staff that we have. And the highest one we've ever seen is the one we got for this coming fiscal year. And again, those are estimates on the top line. It could be 23 million, but you'll see that'll be one of the years we generally have more money coming in. This is the headcount we've seen over the same years. In 2018, it was 100, 2019, 104, 2020, 106. The FY 2021, as y'all remember, there was COVID, and there was an across-the-board 14% budget cut requested by the legislature that we achieved. Part of that was reducing headcount there. 2022, 89, 2023, 91, 2024, 95. If we're able to fill every position that y'all gave us, we'll get to 109 for 2025. And you'll see that the varying changes, it's not large, it's kind of bounced around that 100 level. And part of the issue we have is talent and willingness to be in a government employment situation. Down here in the Macon area, it's been hard to find people. We have situations where we put advertisements out, especially for analysts and call center positions. We'll have 6 people say they're showing up, and who wants to guess how many show up for the interview? 0? 0 would have been right. That's not uncommon. It's very hard to get people to come and do this. So I'm appreciative also of the pay raises and retention money that has been put into the budget, because that's been helpful for us to hold on to people and to draw new people in. These are the kind of the overall challenges we're seeing as it comes to licensing, which is the war for talent. And I'll talk a little bit about that here, but the war for talent is the way we view it being nationwide. We want to make it easy to get licensed here and to work here, so it's easier for us to bring talent here so we can keep on expanding the economy and bring small business owners, because those are the people who create new industries and create new jobs. Dislocated workers, people getting moved around, military barriers. A lot of moves have been made to take care of that in the law. Now we're functionally trying to figure out how to make it all work. Essentially, there's 2 federal laws and now 2 state laws sort of run all in parallel that says if you show up, we can give you a provisional license. And it moves very quickly. In the old system, it's a manual process. In the new system, it's automatic. You click the button that you're a military spouse, and we have you scanned in. There's normally a card you get, because you get the PX and everything that shows who you are. You will get moved to the very front of the line, and we issue a provisional license. The limitations for people with a criminal background, I know that y'all have been talking about this now for 3 years. He got very close to passing that bill at the end on sign you die, and then went kind of back and forth at the end. It didn't quite make it, but hopefully together as part of this, we can see some of that done too. And then foreign trained professionals. This is especially true in the healthcare arena and for nurses. There are some legal and board rule issues around that. We want to make it, we want to have good people here, but we want to make it easy to get here because we have a shortage of caregivers in the state. With that, let me give you a little bit of background on the system we had, which was MLO, which is my license online. It is an older system now. It is about 23 years old. For any computer system, that is a very old system. It was designed to deal with applications and licensing, basically taking the 1950s, mail it in, sign it, get it notarized, and they put a computer on top of it. They did no process improvement around it. They basically said, this is how we do it. Let's have a computer so we can track what's happening. So it doesn't, it's really designed for the analysts to use. There's only about 25% that were 100% online of licenses that the applicants could use. A lot of it was still paper. And we brought in an outside consulting group to look at what can we do to make this process better, not just the system, but the overall process. And what we figured out was the way the system is designed now, there's basically, it is opaque to the applicant and to the licensee. They can't really see much behind the scenes. So what we tried to do in GOALS, which is the Georgia Online Application and Licensing System. And we had a contest in the office, and that one won. So I got a $100 gift certificate if we won with that.
When was this?
About a year ago. And so we started the process of looking at this in 2021. Actually started somewhat in 2020 with the discussions. We launched it in 2021. And what we did is we didn't have a special appropriation to do this build out, but because we had come in so far under budget on buying the voting machines, we worked with y'all to put a line item into the budget to redirect $3,584,000, I think was the number, of the bond money that we had left over to do this build out. And we burned through that. So, and the system we built is on a Salesforce back records. Another thing we discovered is there is a lot of personal identifying information in licensing, as you can imagine. There's fingerprints, there's criminal background checks, there's social security numbers. And the system we had, and there were some trades specifically that would have one email address attached to 200 licenses. So they would have access to go and see some of this information, which we thought security-wise didn't matter as much in 1990, 1999 when it first got the system. And now we have to make sure that the individual's information is protected and that it is in a secure situation. So with that, we moved to the cloud, and we are on the FedRAMP GovCloud. FedRAMP is basically the same level of protocols that the Department of Defense and the FBI use to hold on to their data and information. And there is a cost attached to that, obviously, but we think it's important to protect people's privacy. And that is one of the administrative issues we've run into, is people having to re-verify they are who they say they are getting into the new system. So this is what we wanted to do with GOALS. We wanted to increase customer satisfaction by making it easier to access and a more transparent process. And by more transparent process, in our initial review, it took an average of 6 touches in between an analyst and an applicant to get the application complete. And that was what was documented. That was emails, phone calls, calls in the call center. That was before. So it means we had as many more than that as we'd had less than that. Because very rarely was there a complete application. And that was obviously slowing things down tremendously. And it took up analyst time because they're having to talk to human beings. And as you've noticed in the growth, we've added 25% more licenses and human beings with the same staff. So we want to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness by automating as much of the process as we could. Intake, the big part of what we have to do right now, because a lot of it is still paper application. Intake has to come in. Application comes in. They have to take the pieces of the application and scan it into their MLO system right now. They then have to assign it a license number. They have to type in everything for this person, their social security number, their address, their name. There's going to be tens of thousands of these done annually. And as we all know, human beings are wildly fallible. There are typos, there are mistakes. There's one number off on a social security number, which is one of the issues we've had with people trying to verify their systems. Because we can see that something's wrong and it's difficult. Another thing we have to deal with is we still have what I would call legacy data issues. There are active licenses that were issued in the 1950s still that we have. But we also have all the inactive licenses that we have to keep on file. So as an example, when we moved from MLO to goals, I just had a report done this morning to see how many different artifacts, data points, everything else for committee to do a particular release of that kind of information to a specific population. The digital team, unbeknownst to us, decided to change the rules on that, and they ended up sending about 77,000 of the wrong pins to the wrong people who didn't need them. And that was a problem. That was addressed. Don't think that person works there anymore. But that's when you're doing these kind of things, I anticipate that. When I lead projects, I tell the staff, I can guarantee you one thing, we will make a mistake. How do we address and deal with that mistake is how we're going to be judged. So we put a lot of emphasis on trying to get the people who needed to get relicensed, renewed, done. One population that's been having a really serious problem with this is cosmetologists, but over 30,000 of them have been renewed now. They're at about almost 60%. And there's some behavioral things attached. 60% sounds kind of low. Normally in a 2-year cycle, at the end of there's 2 periods. We have the end of the renewal period, then we have what we call late lapsed renewal period, which is another 30 days basically. Normally, cosmetologists only get to about 65 to 68% in that initial number. Right now, they're at 59%. Magically, the last month, they jumped to 89. They're the people who put it off till they absolutely have to do it. So I'm holding the line that we are having July 31st is going to be the cutoff date for them. And then their late lapse renewal will go to August 31st. Because I think behaviorally, a lot of them said, well, they keep on pushing it, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. And I've had to deal with some of this myself because there was a particular email that we use that's sort of the catch-all of customer service for our office, which is called SOS Contact. And there was an employee who left, and that wasn't assigned to anybody for like 3 weeks. So they kind of built up. And at one point, it got to 4,000. We now have it down to where it's cleaned out every single day. And I usually get up around 5 in the morning and do it myself sometimes and work with the front office to do it. But the good thing about that, it gives me a lot of insight as to what the issues they're dealing with are. And one of the advantages of goals is once you do a verification, it takes you to a particular page that is a static URL. And by static URL, it means that this is the verification page for Betty Smith. And I can take that and email it to her directly. And she doesn't have to worry about a PIN, doesn't have to worry about that kind of stuff because I've already verified it. So that's helped us get through some of this backlog. The average processing time in goals for a new license is 18 days. The average renewal time with a complete app is 1 minute. If you get in there and upload your continuing education, check that you aren't a criminal, it's automatic. It's 1 minute. So it's getting over that verification hump, which is part of the security protocols we put in. That's been our biggest problem of how we architect this. So this is where we are on the pilot rollout things. And this is a tentative schedule because we're doing something right now, basically redesigning some of the architecture. It's a structural redesign because there wasn't, in retrospect now we've seen that there was an error in how we structured emails and contact cards tying to licenses. We needed to have one contact card, which in the system that's a human being. That's a licensee to hold multiple licenses. The original architecture basically said one email, one person, one license. So that's been an administrative issue on our side that we've had to go merge a lot of these together. Now we're 90% there. But again, a lot of this has some legacy data issues. Sometimes people use the wrong names. Sometimes they have misspelled their own name in the system. We've had people come into our front office and they mistype their emails. I mean, and it's just because oftentimes they're frustrated. You know, when you're frustrated, you're just pounding away at the keys. And 9 times out of 10, it's something like that that's been the issue on the verification process. One actual issue we had was if you had a facility and individual license, this is part of the problem with the structure, you got 2 pins. But it wasn't clear which pin went with which license. Now we've merged probably 90% of these, so that doesn't matter as much now. But that was one of the issues we had at the beginning. So we've learned a lot from the pilot rollout one. And like I said, over 80,000 people have verified. Over 55,000 people have renewed, and nearly 8,000 have gotten new licenses. And one of the things I was proud of is we're moving at a faster rate than we were in MLO once you get past the front door. Like I said, my goal is to get down to 10 days. My goal is to get it down to a minute because I think if we can move to administrative issue versus the board having to look at all these things and take subjectivity into account, that will get us past a lot of these problems structurally. So I come to say, our care is your care. We want people to get to work. Some of this is resourcing, obviously, for both short term and long term. And one of the things that we can look at is other states. And we can choose to do a path like I think most of y'all know. I was opposed to the Pels board going off on their own. Their argument for doing it mainly was that they wanted to be able to have their own investigators and their own complaints and things along those lines. The reality was there had been a series of, I think, 2 complaints filed against an engineer over the previous 3 years. But they said, that's because we know y'all aren't going to do anything. In Florida, they have like 100. And that requires building up another $1.5 million piece of agency. So we disagreed with that. We think that the keeping things together, we get economies of scale. But one of the other issues that we have is because of the way the boards are structured, and that subjectivity, and there are rules and law that make it different in every single one of the trades. I can't take an analyst over here and move them to another trade because you have to retrain them all. I can't plug and play. One of the goals is to work with y'all to get to an administrative point where I can take, let's say nurses are graduating, I can take 4 extra people and put them over into nursing and deal with that overflow. I can't do that because of what the training is so different, so varied. So what we normally end up doing now is we'll get temps in and train them directly, and that's what we're doing. We don't have enough people doing everything else. So it's hard to shift internally those resources unless we can make this administrative. I keep coming back to a theme on this, that we can make the licensing administrative, so it's just binary. One of the things that's really good in goals now is every applicant can see a checklist of what they're missing. And so the biggest one I've seen now is usually a citizenship affidavit. They might upload it, but they forgot to notarize it. So we have to take a little bit of time for people to go through because of the volume we have to go back and have to look at it and say, no, you forgot to do that. Go back and get it, done. Now we go back to the fingerprinting issues. If people graduate and they're in another state right now, the GBI uses field print, and there's an issue with field print, and I don't fully understand this, but it's going to be taken care of. Is if you're in another state, I talked to Representative Lott. She was trying to hire somebody for one of her locations who was in New York. If you're out of state, there are field print offices there, but you can't do the electronic one. The electronic one takes about 3 days to get. You get fingerprinted, goes to GBI, and they shoot a report straight to us. But if you're out of state, you have to use a package where you fingerprint physically, mail it to GBI, and those can take 3 months. That's completely out of our hands. But GBI says they're going to a new vendor where we can do electronic for everything, but that's still not until January. That's one of our issues. Oftentimes, we have a situation, this is true for nurses in the NCLEX, is we're waiting on transcripts to show up. Oftentimes, for people coming from another state trying to do reciprocity, we have to get a verification from the state itself, because we can't just take a picture that they send us of their license, because they could lie. They could doctor it. I mean, Photoshop is not hard to do anymore. And we need to get it from the state, because the state can see if there's board orders, can see if there's criminal convictions in other places. So we have to get it from that state to show they are in good standing at the time, because the law says they have to be in good standing at the time to get a reciprocity license. And I'm getting into the weeds to show there's a lot of stuff that's kind of out of our hands oftentimes. But the biggest things that I would ask of the legislature, and I always ask for resources, is to find ways to lower the number of overall licenses we have to have. And that way, the bodies we have focus on those things, but make the licensure, initial licensure, and the renewals be administrative as we possibly can, because then our staff can look at it and say, yes, I got the driver's license. Yes, I have the citizenship verification. Yes, I have the test scores. They're good to go. That would make it a lot easier to get these people moved through quickly. And the backlog we have, it feels like forever when you're trying to get a job. It sucks, and I get that. And one of the best things I have, to Chairman Hatchett's point, is when I can go in and I can see that somebody's filed everything and I can get issued. I love that, because I know that person gets to do the job they want. And that's the attitude of everybody at ELB and the call center. They want to genuinely help these people. They want to get them through. The frustration they're feeling, the frustration our team feels, because and I said this in a meeting last week, I said, even if it's user error, even if it's something they haven't done, if we didn't design it easy enough for a 5-year-old to do, that's on us. And we're working to make it better all the time. And one of the things we're doing in goals is we have what I call 2 in a box to basically run it itself. And as a product manager, not a project manager, this is a product. It will be always changing. It will be iterative. We will learn. We will be able to do things. One of the reasons we wanted to change from MLO too was, even if I wanted to change language in there, it would be $25,000 for just to go into somebody that was all hard coded. This is low code. This will allow us to be much more flexible. When you all pass a new law, it makes it a lot easier for us to implement. Under MLO, it was, I'm a Senator Tillery, Mr. Chairman, I've gone to you before and said, if we do this, it'll be $125,000 code change for MLO. I've had to ask for that before, and I got some of it sometimes, and otherwise I've just tried to figure it out. But that was another reason we left MLO. Now, there is a cost to this one, and it's a higher licensing cost. But it's for a system that would very rarely go down. I mean, if anybody's used Salesforce before, you'll get a notification that was down for 4 seconds one time. But one of the issues we have is we are in the FedRAMP cloud right now, and sometimes if another federal agency or state agency is doing a heavy load of something, it can affect our performance. So we've been working with Salesforce and our implementer MTX to move us to what they call a hyper cloud. I know it sounds stupid, but it's supposed to be a lot more flexible and work. So we're working on this every single day. The staff at PLB, and there's no additional headcount to do this. They're doing their regular duties and they're working on this rollout. They're having to do UAT testing. They're having to explain how the systems work to these programmers. And we didn't have the extra headcount. So I went to everybody and I told many of y'all when we said this, that it's going to slow down for a period of time, but it will be better at the end of the day. And this is taking longer than I wanted, but it's working. Like I said, over almost 600,000 logins and over 85,000 unique users in the system. But we still have to make sure the people in MLO are getting through and having their stuff done. So, and one more staffing issue we talked about. Again, thank you for the budget. As of July 9th, I will no longer be the director of licensing. We hired somebody. Tom, I butchered his last name, Zandrowicz. He comes to us from Amazon, a little startup company y'all might have heard of. He ran customer success teams. He's run call centers. He's a technology guy. He's about process. And when we brought him in, I told him the same thing we just did a little while ago. We want Chick-fil-A level of customer service. And like y'all, I'm a recovering elected official. I was in city government. And so was Secretary Raffensperger before he served in the legislature and served as secretary. Our goal, I think y'all's goal too, is people shouldn't have to think about it. They shouldn't have to think about government. They should just function. The light timing should be right. The pothole should get filled. I shouldn't have to worry about it. This system, at the end of the day, will achieve the goals of making it easy to apply so that when they're working at other functional things, right now with these surge capacities, because we have these dates of every 2 years, I want to move it to where we have it, when you first got licensed for your birthday, that way we can even the workload out. And it's not these big spikes up and down. And the secondary advantage to that is, for the budget writers up there, is it will even out the money that comes in. Because if you see the spikes, you saw 28 million, 20 million. So it's harder to gauge some of those things. If we did things like that, when we're fully into goals, we can do some of those things. But we need the flexibility to administratively do some things. And so with that, I talked way longer than I intended. And Chairman Hatchett, when you said bring your Gabe as long as he wants, it's always a dangerous thing to say with me to the microphone. But I stand here for any questions you might have for specifics. And we had two bills last year I really wanted, which was a 60-day one and the continuing education bill for boards. One follow-up to that, this is what we talked about, the continuing education to be tracked electronically. I've talked to the Attorney General's office, and we can probably, it looks like we're going to do that as a director rule for all the boards. We don't necessarily need the law, although I like having law because it makes boards feel much more invested in what we do administratively. So we will be putting out a bid in the next 2 months probably to get a continuing education broker to do this. Not CE broker, but a broker and system to track this. We already have an incumbent for some of the boards, but not all the boards. This will make life a hell of a lot easier for all the licensees because it'll tie in with an API directly in the system, and they'll get notifications. This is what you need. Here's your classes, those kind of things. So those are the kind of things we're looking to do to help the applicants and licensees. I'm good. Whatever questions you got,
Well,
don't make them too hard for me though.
No, thank you. I'm sure that everyone up here might have some questions, but if that's okay, I'll kind of start off and just make some statements and questions too. I'm convinced, because of knowing your background and your track record, that you're going to get this system perfect. I know that.
That's a high bar, but we'll try.
Well, but I don't think that's really the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're dealing with customers and people and customer service, and I think the frustration over the last year or two has been that those that are here with questions probably have not been able to talk to anyone, get answers. What's the holdup? What's going on? I think it's the people to people issue that that's where the frustration is. So you stated that you've hired a new director starting July 9th. How long has that position been open? I know you can't run everything, Gabe. I mean, I know you want to, but how long has that been vacant?
Since, well, I held it, but it was January of 2021. And one of the things, there's two reasons it was vacant. I thought we had somebody who was going to take it about a year and a half ago. I don't want to out who it was, but it was somebody who really wanted. And I bent over, and the secretary bent over backwards. We even raised the pay well above what it had been. And at the end, that gentleman begged off. So part of that budget went, because I didn't have, it went towards some temps and helping do this build out for the last year and a half, the biggest part of that. So, and secretary and the deputy came to me many times, said, you got to get a director. I'm like, we don't have the budget for it right now with everything else we're doing, but July 1, 2024, July 1, 2024, the beginning of the fiscal year, we will have budget for that. So we went out with a headhunter. We found him about 2 months ago. I wanted to hire him earlier, but he had to get out, and we also didn't have budget on it at that point.
So he will be moving to Macon.
I think he lives south of Atlanta, so he'll be driving and working in Macon.
How many you have around 100 in the licensing division here, or are they scattered throughout the state?
Most of them are here. We also have call center personnel who are work from home personnel for the most part. So we have about probably 85 in the building usually.
So if we went over there right now, there'd be maybe around 80 people there.
No, because we do have work from home options for several of them, and I've given that to the executive directors. When I tried to bring everybody back, we were tracking the numbers, and productivity actually fell. The number of licenses getting out fell. And I think I'll give an anecdote to kind of show what sort of happened in those situations. I remember I was sitting one day in my office there, and I listened to 5 different people talking about an issue for somebody. And they talked for about 10, 15 minutes. They went away, came back about an hour later, we're still talking about the same issue. So when they're at home, they would make a decision about some of those things and move on. When they're together, sometimes it doesn't work as well. But that's not true for every division. Again, that's some divisions. Some divisions are there every day. Some divisions, they have a mix, but I leave it to the executive director to know their teams, to know how to do that best.
All right, so I've got 2 more questions, and I'll turn it over to Chairman Dory. So what you just stated, I think, is part of the issue. I'm from Dublin, and it's not too far to drive to the license office. So I've had 2 constituents in particular. One, cosmetology, had been on trying to get stuff online. It didn't work. She called. This was over 3 months, and she finally said, "Heck, I'm just going to drive up there."
Mhm.
So she drove up there. After 6 hours in the office, finally she got everything resolved, and they couldn't print her license because they didn't have any ink for the print. Okay. The other person I have has been going on for about 3 years with his electric license, and all that information has been sent to your office. He came up to visit and spent about 3 hours in the office, and finally, the young lady said, "Well, the person you need to be talking to is not here. Let me get her on the phone." So in the conversation, the girl that he was talking to that was working from home said, "Oh, well, there's not anybody there. I only have to come to the office once every 6 weeks." So there's the frustration. And I'll just close with saying that if you want to say anything back, I'll make sure you have all the specifics on both. But the cosmetologist has her license; she could print it at home. And the other gentleman, I don't know if that issue is resolved yet.
And that falls under one of those that's subjective for him. But specifically, part of the reason I get frustrated and have to come up there is we are below headcount where we need to be in our call center right now. And we've also, in the last couple of weeks, changed how the call center runs. Actually, I guess we started about a month and a half. Previously, we had a queue for callbacks. And the queue, we would only fill to about 100. So what we've done now is, other than that, there was no place to leave a message because we didn't have bodies to go and get the messages and take them down and follow up. So we had a queue for that. So what we've basically done is that we've taken off the regulator on that queue. So now it just stacks up. You will get a call back. Now, with the volume we have and the head count we have right now, that callback may take a couple of days. But there's a lot of people we're never getting through just because of the sheer volume. We average, and this has been true since Secretary Kemp was here, we average between 3,000 and 4,500 calls a day. Not just for PLB, it's for corporations, elections, for some insane reason, gets a lot of calls now. And that call center handles all of that. Oh, there's a special level of training we have for the escalating issues. That's a smaller university. So the people with the big problems, like your friend had, that's a smaller group of people have to go through all that. That's our tier 2 to get through that. But this has been a relatively new change. And I'm hoping that Todd, having his call center experience, can say, is this the best way to handle some of these things? We tried the chat bots, we tried those things. The problem we have is, again, with your friend, it's going to be such a specific thing. I can't train a chat bot to say, you need to get this particular license in with this stamp on it and that kind of stuff. And I agree with you. We're trying to add headcount so that we have the throughput to deal with these things. Once every 6 weeks is a little out of line from what I'm used to hearing, and that doesn't quite jive up with what I see from talking to our executive directors at our weekly meetings, but I can ask about that.
Well, it's, that's what some of this stuff is not going to get handled by. You're going to have people that can deal with people.
Well, again, we don't have the headcount, even if we haven't had the headcount. That's been one of the problems. For the volume, we saw the growth, we saw the amount of money we had, and everything else is more expensive on top of that. I mean, some of y'all may have noticed the sign down at the Secretary of State's office. Somebody decided to run off the road, hit the sign, and knock it to hell. So we got the bricks put back up, but it's going to cost us about $18,000 to put the letters back on. And I put that off until 2025 because that money is better used for employees getting licensing done. So we're doing what we have with the resources we have. I've never not said this. I'm thankful for the 1.4 million. I would love the 2.4 we started with as a starting point, because that's why I pointed out we bring in a lot more money to the state than we cost, and I want to use that money to service the licensees and the applicants. We're all on the same page with that. But if we had more bodies, we can restructure some of these things and then make it hopefully work better.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I got just a couple of questions if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. I want to start with just where you finished. You said the licenses are up 24%. I went back just at your sheet. Have license fees changed much since 2018? I'm just using the years you were using.
Not really. I mean, we've added a small fee, a $10 fee for paper, because I'm trying to push people to the computer, and a $5 fee for regular processing. That's really the only thing. And the boards control those fees, we don't. So I don't know them all off the top of my head. I know I've got the list here and everything, but I'm not sure. I think most of them have remained essentially the same. The only one that's really changed is the one that's no longer ours, which is Health's, because they're doing it annually and they up.
The reason I asked that is you mentioned the licensing, the number of licenses is up 24%.
Mm-hmm.
If that's falling on a linear path, then you would think the payments to Treasury would be up 24%. But on your sheet, they're not. They're up about 10.
I don't know.
I'm wondering where the extra
that.
15% is.
I don't know. I have to look into it. But also, some licenses are more expensive than others. So the number of licenses we have may not be linear too. It may only be, instead of, for nurses, I think it's $70 for renewals. For other people, it's 50 and 25. So even if you have a bunch more of those, it's not going to be a linear path. I'm doing this in my head real quick, but I can look into the details of it.
That was my first question.
Yeah.
$3.1 million that came in roughly 2 fiscal years ago. I'm guessing that's what's paid for pilot and rollout 1. And then we'll go to rollout 2. Pilot and rollout 1 is up and going. So all those we see in column 1 are now on the new system, correct?
Correct.
Since you've now got a pretty clear almost 1 year of running pilot and rollout 1, what have you seen? I don't want to use the word return on investment because I don't know that that's the best thing, but how much faster are you seeing licenses come out of those areas you were able to move from your old legacy system to the new system for the columns you got through
It's
pilot
hard
and
for me.
rollout 1?
It's difficult for me to say only because in the MLO system, it will take a manual look to get a report, because if you do a reinstatement that's been gone for a while, your initial application date is what that report draws from. You have to manually pull all the reinstatements. There's a lot, and it changes the dates. My basic from looking at the data is it's been like usually 35 to 40 days from most. Like I said, nurses is 18, but that's where we have our biggest staff. And that's in the old system. So it's going faster, but our initial business case for doing this too was if we can get this system up, and we could take some of the intake personnel, retrain them to make them analysts. And that way, because intake should eventually go away, because we should have less and less and less paper. That's the long-term goal of this.
I'm just trying to get since pilot and rollout one's been going now for almost a year, I'm wondering, are these licenses going out faster because we could interpolate that that's what's going to happen with rollout two for that category if it is faster?
They will be for the things that are administrative. The problem we have is things have to be reviewed by boards. Like in the second rollout, you're going to have all the counseling and assistance. By law, they have to look at even incomplete applications, and they have to go through the board before the staff can issue. So that's the biggest change that will affect getting us to more quickly, is to move to binary questions to get licensed and no subject, as little to no subjectivity. That's what's going to move it. And then I'll just give you sort of a dream scenario. And we know this is like touching a third rail. When Governor Kemp was Secretary of Kemp, he tried to do the super board, for those of you who remember that fight. And all the boards came together and were like, hell no, not doing this. And they decided not to go that way. I'm not saying we should do a super board. I'm saying that licensing itself, the front end of here's your license, ought to be an administrative function that's handled by the Secretary of Staff. Complaints and compliance, where the expertise is really going to be helpful, would be where a board could really serve the public and protect health and safety. So that way, we have this money, we have these individuals, and a lot of them have to do board support now too. We have, for each board, there's a board support person that mainly does only board support. They don't do analysis, but they're servicing the needs of their board. So if I could take 7 more employees off board support, put them on that, and have a complaints compliance section that's organized just for that, that could make things easier. We have lots of different ways to try to skin this cat, but we're stuck kind of with the rules and the laws we have right now. And some of them were all done for things that made sense when they passed. To your point in your opening remarks, there are things that made sense in 1970 and 1950 that don't make sense in 2020.
Well, that's my next question. So I'm going to cut you off and go right to that. You've been the director of licensing for 2 years.
3.
3.
Yeah.
Even more than I was giving you credit for. Which ones do we not need?
There's board members in here right now, so I'm sure they're going to love all this. Again, there's a way to look at these things where, like I said, librarians is my point on one of them. I don't need librarians. A lot of the ones, and there's always a health and safety thing that you need to have accountability for. But frankly, one of the oldest ones we have, the world has changed. And I love these people, and they're great. But hearing aid dealers and dispensers. We have the internet. You can order things online. You see these commercials on television all the time. But the laws are still there, and they're functioning their business based on the way those laws were written. Dispensing opticians is another one that I think we could probably license, but make it sort of a generalized thing. I don't want to be the person to say what we don't do and don't need, because I think a lot of these things have to do with healthcare specifically. We're going to have geologists. That goes back to when you're doing foundation work and everything. You have a licensed geologist to sign off on some of these things. I don't know if they need to be. If you graduated and you got a good review on Google and you work for a legitimate firm, do you really need that license? I don't know. I don't know if that's necessary. That's a smaller one. Let's see.
How about low voltage electrician?
I'm not going to touch that one. That sounds pretty. Music therapy.
Many states don't
Yeah,
license.
many states don't license those guys. Music therapy is another one that I'm sure well-intentioned, but a lot of these, Senator, go back to the reason lactation consultants wanted to be licensed is that's how you can get your reimbursements from Medicaid. We need to look at the federal laws to kind of force licensure on people. But to Senator Williams' point, a lot of these boards now, and I don't think it's intentional, I think it's human nature sometimes, they're there to protect the integrity of the profession, quote unquote, instead of serving, the generalized public. And that's one of the problems with boards. You have a lot of benefit that's concentrated, but the harm is more widespread and feel the harm sometimes.
The last point I had, I think Chairman Hatchett hit it better with his questions than I could on the office policy.
Mhm.
I personally believe Georgian taxpayers believe we are post-COVID and are expecting us to be back. And that's something that I understand you think it may be a hit to your workforce. That may be so, but I would urge reconsideration of that policy, as we're going to urge across all states, not just your office particularly. I think Georgians feel that they want to see something.
Well, I'll say this too. I was in your same mindset that we need everybody back in a majority of the time. And that's what I've told the directors. But I was leaving them with their ability to manage their staff. And when I saw the number of licenses and renewals going down, my focus was on the licensees and the applicants getting their stuff done. So that was the metric I was basing that decision on at the time. And that's been, I guess I tried to bring them back in 2020, early 2022. And it just did not work very well. And that's probably, it could be a time to revisit that and a good discussion to have with a new director.
I'm sure there'll be more questions on this.
And let me say one other thing too, real quick. I have a ridiculous amount of data that I'm going to give to David and everybody sitting in the corner over there on licenses, number of licenses, individual licenses, renewal periods with trends and everything else. And they can parse it and go through that so y'all can get a very good vision of how we got here and where we are. And you can see sort of the peaks and valleys on this thing. So tons and tons of spreadsheets. You're going to be excited.
Thank you, Chairman. And Gabe, thanks for the briefing and the feedback. But piggybacking off Chairman Tillery's, and this is just a recommendation. Have you guys thought about maybe having offices outside of Macon, i.e., smaller offices, hybrid areas? Because you talked about your employment, folks, zero showing up. I think the work from home thing is an option. However, I think if you look at the other urban areas where people don't have to travel to Macon, they can possibly go to an office somewhere local. And then another option, well, again, recommendations. I'm sure you guys probably heard all kinds, but when you talked about having to update their old files that were scanned in earlier and things like that, around the state of Georgia, is there a possibility that you could work with maybe the colleges and universities to have interns come in and sort of help do that labor portion of it? At some either cost or maybe credit. Again, I'm sure you can get with some presidents or whatever, some type of credit they could receive for doing that type of work, however you want to describe it. But those are just some observations. Again, looking forward to working with you.
We actually have one operating satellite office in Tifton that can handle most of this stuff. A lot of y'all know Keith down there. We do that. And then we have an office in Cartersville that we have not staffed back up since we had our office employee have a baby up there. We haven't had an individual up there other than for random office hours. We've looked at that, but again, there's a cost for that kind of thing. What we have talked about doing potentially is finding state government-owned facilities, colleges, Department of Labor offices that are all over the place, and potentially having office hours with people out there if they're having those issues. My goal is for people not to have issues to have to go anywhere. Under MLO was 23 years old. People were kind of used to how it worked, and they knew they couldn't see things, but they got used to it. People will get used to this, and this will pass. But we're trying to do everything we can, which is why we've upped the call center where we're trying to angle 55 heads in the call center. We got to as low as 28 at one. Now, that was about 2 years ago. We're getting better about that, but it's still hard to hire people, train people, and keep people.
Chairman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all the good information you gave. Just a couple of random thoughts, I guess. I'm an insurance agent. Years ago, we went to our birthday for our anniversary for our license. That's worked really well. I think that's a great move y'all ought to make. And we are on a 2-year, we went to 2-year licenses. The fee did not go down. So it used to be $50 a year. Now it's $100 plus processing a year. So that helped with the efficiency. And I think the insurance commissioner uses Circon to track our continuing education. And we can go in, log in anytime we want to and see where we're at on our continuing ed and how much we lack. So just some thoughts there. You talked about Chick-fil-A level customer service. No offense, but your reputation is not customer friendly reputation. To kind of piggyback on what both the chairmen have talked about, I do think we need a more focus on customer service and human touch for some of this. And I would recommend, like, you've got this rollout 2, and you know there's going to be confusion, and a lot of people don't read their emails and can't follow instructions and are trying to multitask while they're doing this, etc. I would recommend working with the trade associations to have either an in-person clinic for this particular group, like the conditioned air contractors, when you get ready to roll that out, or either have a webinar with a live person available for people that are having problems, because the complaints I get, and I'm hearing this from others, is, I can't get anybody on the phone. I can't get a call back. I've sent emails. I don't get a response. And I go to the office and I can't even get in because I don't have an appointment. Um, it's the frustration, and there's probably 80% of the people are going to be able to handle it and do it on their own in the system and figure it out. But there's probably 20% that wants some hand holding. And if you could offer some sort of webinar or go to send somebody to, like, when the conditioned air people have their annual conference or a meeting, or make somebody available to help folks that are struggling with their verification, their re-verification, or their process. That's just a little more human touch and a little bit more. And I know it's all a resource issue. I do think what I've heard today from you, I'm encouraged that goals is ultimately going to pay dividends and be a good thing. But anytime you change systems, it's frustrating for people, and there's going to be issues and problems. And I think you ought to try to prepare for that as you roll out the December 24th thing. I heard from a scrap metal dealer. They're not listed up there, but apparently they have to be licensed. Maybe they're considered a used motor vehicle parts dealer. I don't know, but
That's a weird one, honestly, because there's a registry they have to go to, but it's through the sheriff's office. They have to get something from us, and I hear about this once every 5 or 6 months, and nobody can really. That's not really considered a license. It's just a registration again. But they're supposed to just upload something that goes to a registry that we have, and that's about all it's supposed to be. But to your point, I 100% agree. I would love to have the bodies to do that, and when I got tons of emails and letters of the human being I talked to was great and very helpful, and I got it done. And I love this person. Now, it took me a month to get to that person, and that's frustrating. But our staff are dedicated, and they want to do the right thing. Like I said, we have people who get up at 5, 6 in the morning who work on emails to try to get an answer back out to them. We just changed the callback system to where one of the really frustrating things was if you got past the 100 and you got towards the end of the day, it just hung up on you. It wasn't supposed to do that, but it did that. And I can tell you, I was extremely angry. It's supposed to have a message saying, this is what's going on. You can reach us this way. And it didn't do that for a period of time. But now we don't have that at all because everybody goes to a callback queue. And it may be a day or two, but everybody gets a callback. And the problem is usually it's a cell, so they have it with them. But there's still one of our bigger populations having a problem with this is some of our more senior cosmetologists, and they don't have cell phones sometimes. So they're having some issues around that, and technology itself is challenging sometimes for them. But everything y'all have said, it's impossible for me to disagree with. It's just a question of resources and time. I mean, we want everybody licensed as fast as they can be licensed. And the secondary part of it is we can't make boards do things. And I'm not saying this is an overall problem, but the way some of these laws are antiquated, and it made sense to have some of these subjective looks at some of the stuff. But it's still kind of weird to me in many cases. Like we talk about health and safety, and we have nail technicians that we license, but all the actual health of those facilities is the purview of the county health department. We don't do anything with that. All we do is go see if they have a license there or not. I mean, so does it make sense to do some of those things that way? I don't know. Because there's a health and safety issue around cosmetology and nails and that kind of stuff. I get it. But the enforcement mechanism, generally speaking, is a local county. So should they be licensed there, or should they get a license from us and then that's handed over? I mean, there's all these kind of moving parts to it that we could sit and have a discussion for days as to what's really needs to be licensed, to Chairman Tillery's point, and what doesn't. But we have to have the throughput because the law says we execute the laws as they are written, and we have to have as much body as we can to do.
Chairman, Lady Mike, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I've learned a lot today. Being a chiropractor, we just came through part of our CE, and board members come to our CE because we have to have 1 hour of Georgia law. So we have an attorney that speaks, but we also have board members that speak. So we learned about goals and the new portal, and please don't be frustrated. Just get it done before October, because I understand that the portal will be open in October for that renewal.
It's a moving date right now
Okay.
because until the structural change is done, I'm not saying you're not allowed to do this. And one of the things in our contract is they don't get paid until I say they finished this one. They don't get paid until they finish the next one.
Gotcha. But anyways, I'm saying all that to agree with Chairman Walker with using our trade organizations. The more information we get to our members and to our licensees, I think the better it is. I too got my phone blown up by the physical therapists because out of pure fear, they didn't want to lose their licenses and not be able to practice and not be able to work. So it was a fear mechanism for them. I see that coming down the road in October. Who can direct the boards? If the Secretary of State's office can't, who can?
Nobody.
There's the problem.
I mean, the governor could probably call and yell at him, but I don't know if he wants to do that.
There may be
He appoints all of them, so.
Right. Well, there may be part of the problem that maybe the legislature needs to look at. The other thing that I wanted to ask is the systems that you're merging, is that a coding? I'm learning about coding in my life. Is that a coding issue or?
There's two different parts of it. There were the coding. They structurally did it a way that didn't work properly. So we're having to restructure that. The other thing I was talking about is really about data migration. Data migration, especially for older data that doesn't have the same fields, doesn't have things matched up. We didn't used to have social security numbers. So trying to match all that up and capture everything and make sure it's assigned the right way is a Herculean task. I mean, we have a specific tool called MuleSoft to move a gigantic amount of information because it's a lot of scans and a lot of those kind of things. But it's to the point I'm telling you before, we had 23 million individual pieces of data attached to all those licenses before, and that was just for the people on the far left. There are a lot more people, and really roll out 3 because that's nurses. And yes, we intentionally put nurses at the very end to make sure everything was running like a top. Because nurses aren't happy. They will absolutely let all of y'all know it, and they will let me know it, and they will let the secretary know it. So we're going to make sure it's all working properly before we put the nurses into that system. Oh, and one more thing. I'm sorry. to your point on the working with associations, with physical therapists and occupational therapists, we were able to do that. It was a good working relationship when the challenges came. Cosmetologists don't have like a really strong kind of organization, which has made that more difficult. So in order to do that, to Karen Walker's point, we've done a lot of micro learning videos and things like webinars. I would love to have the bodies to go to all these things.
Then it's consistent as well.
Yes.
I
Well,
think.
you can click on the link now and it shows that. And we part of the fear people had too, and again, we can't make people read. Across the top of everything on the goals, it says your date has been extended to. They've all gotten emails saying your date has been extended to. Part of rollout 2 and rollout 3, as well as we're going to move where we can to cell phones because people are much more engaged with their phones and text messaging than they are with emails. That's going to be another tactical change that will hopefully make this easier. Where we can send, here's a micro learning video you can watch on your phone while you do this, versus go pull out your computer, go to this, and it makes it a little bit easier to do.
It may work. I do like the CE tracker. My organization does some of that.
You CE broker right now.
Right.
That's a great for y'all.
Right. And that was a national push out back when I was on the board. The National Board of Examiners kind of, it was PACE back then. I think now I think it's great. Back then I didn't think it was so great.
You mean change was scary and weird?
Yes, very much, very much. I think the boards laterally, when there's new licensees that are filling out applications, if it's a clean application, and I know what I'm saying to you, so just bear with me. If it's a clean application laterally, I believe that 18 days is very attainable, and quite frankly, sometimes it's even down to 10. And I'm proud of staff when they can do that. They can. They're there. They can. I think that's
My goal, ma'am, is 1.
well, that'd be awesome.
I mean, 5 is an attainable one once everything's clicking, as long as there aren't subjective items to have to look at.
Exactly. And that repetitive information with the coding, I think, would be eliminated.
And what will happen at some point is an AI will be able to look to see if the notary is on there and proper. We'll get to that point. We're not there yet. We still have staff do a lot of this. It's all going to get done. And eventually, once that system goes into place, we can move and retrain headcount to take care of these things. And eventually, if we can look at, I've said before, if we can pull a lot of these things out by the roots and start over for licensing, we might be better off than trying to do these changes on the edges.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this may be not appropriate today. Are we going to talk about complaint too within the licensing boards, or is that a different committee? Where's that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk with you offline.
Well, complaints and compliance are a big thing that take up a lot of board time too. So it's all about the amount of work that has to get done.
And I'm very aware of that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Williams.
Thanks, sir. You know, you were mentioning inspections of some of the businesses, professions. Used to funeral homes, I'm in the funeral business. We had a couple of funeral directors that covered the state and inspected funeral homes. But now, or it was under Secretary Handel, it changed. And so the inspectors of funeral homes also inspect beauty shops and barber shops. Now, these inspectors come around and they are making sure we've got 8 caskets, making sure we've got 12 bottles of embalming fluid, making sure that our facilities are clean. We have local health departments that are doing inspections of restaurants. We might see an inspector once a year at a funeral home. If it's public health that we are trying to protect the public, it probably needs to be the local health departments inspecting. These inspectors come in and they don't know what they're looking at. And that needs to be looked at. You asked about boards that could be done away with. In 1983, I was in Atlanta. Wayne Howell was the director of securities. That's when the Cemetery Act was passed. And in this act required perpetual care deposits, pre-need sales reports, and complying with state law. And the director of the securities told us, gentlemen, you steal your perpetual care money, I'm going to put you in prison. You fast forward to a gubernatorial election where some cemetery owners had gotten in trouble with Secretary of State's office. They've been fined and reprimanded. They got the Board of Cemeteries created. The Board of Cemeteries was created, and you can go back and look at their minutes. And there was a funeral home in Gray, Georgia that was stealing perpetual care money and pre-need funeral money. The cemetery board stated meeting after meeting that they had a cease and desist, but they never followed through to go to that funeral home cemetery to call him out, inspect his books. Finally, Channel 5 in Atlanta got a hold to the story. And I'm telling a story, but bear with me if you will. And the sheriff of Jones County got involved, and our district attorney of the Okmulgee Circuit. And they started an investigation and found that this funeral director, cemetery owner, had been stealing money. There was no perpetual care money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars was missing of pre-need funeral money. That people had prepaid their funerals, and the cemetery board did nothing and never followed through. And even in the prosecution in Jones County, and this funeral home cemetery owner was sent to prison by the Okmulgee district attorney, that circuit, and the sheriff of Jones County. The cemetery board never done anything. Under Secretary Raffensperger and the direction of Nuala Zaharis at Securities Division, they pulled the cemetery back into securities, and they are prosecuting cemetery owners. They are holding their feet to the fire, and they are investigating and going after. They need more funds in that division. You don't need a cemetery board. They're worthless. They don't do anything. So when you start looking at more of those boards, you're probably going to uncover more. But another funeral home in Wrightsville, Georgia, was stealing cemetery money, funeral money, pre-need money. Never been prosecuted. We can't get the local district attorneys of some districts to do some things. I'm hoping that under our new law that we've passed, we can start getting that done and getting more cooperation out of our Attorney General's office in directing these boards to take action where they need to take action and follow through with legislation and laws that have been passed. I guess I was making more statements and clarifying more information probably than you wanted.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Senator. And it was we realized that to your point, the specialty of information needed, especially for cemeteries with that kind of financial detail, the regular inspectors we had did not have those skill sets, but the ones who regulate securities and financial planners absolutely have that. And under Nuala Zaharis' direction, it's been a sea change in how the outcome of those things. It is a lot of administrative work being done by the team we have in place there. And I appreciate the advocacy for more resources for Nuala and her team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I think that may be stating that part of what our findings are, that maybe we need to get rid of some of these points.
Well, I've got one other question. How many hours does an EMT have to have in training?
As my understanding is, to be in the back of an ambulance to save a human being's life, I think in this state it's 134.
134 hours. And this could be the guy that could save our life. How many hours does a hairdresser have to go through to get their license?
If memory serves, about 2,000.
2,000 to 134. Thank you.
Representative Mathis.
I promise I'll be brief. I want to say thank you to some of the things that you said y'all addressing as far as the callbacks and that sort of thing. That was one of the issues that I had run into. A lot of folks that called me from used auto part dealers to all the way to cosmetology and different things, funeral directors. I Matt's statement about spending 6 hours and making that happen. I actually went there, saw that. You do have a wonderful worker down there, Miss Horton. She is very, very good, and she could help anyone. So that personal contact, that talking does help. I'm one of those old folks that is not too good with a computer and that sort of thing. So sometimes you do have to one-on-one somebody, and you can walk them through that and fix these things. And I hope we continue to do that. The last thing is the email thing. When you send out emails, I would love to see if we could think about maybe if you send out a couple of emails, the problem's not solved, could a phone be picked up and say, hey, what can we do here? We see that this is not being done this way. And then lastly, I'd like to see those workers back in those offices. That is very paramount. People need to be where they need to be working. So thank you so much for this. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank everybody for their patience. Thank you, Gabe, for hanging in for the questions. And we're going to take about a 10-minute break, come back in here at 11. And those of you that have shown up and want to speak and be heard, you'll make sure that you're signed up on the sheet that's on the table right over here. David, raise your hand. You've got a sign up sheet. So make sure you're signed up. We're going to take a break and we'll be back at 11.
Oh. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Thank you. No, we're going to. Maggie's staying, right? Come on, Rick. Where's the co-chairman?
Matt, feel good knowing that the person that cuts your hair has had 2,000 hours of training.
Or, I mean, if it's.
Ooh, man, the room cleared out.
Yeah, I see.
You think? Wonderful.
Ways. Yeah. You taught and of course I know him.
I guess yeah, all right. I think most people are back in. We'll get restarted. I'll call on Miss April Williams. You just come to the podium, and I'm not gonna say take as long as you want, but we're our goal is to be out of here around lunchtime. So 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
It'll be less. Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. My name is April Williams, and I moved to Georgia last year. I'm sorry? Oh, you can't hear me?
Come up.
Come up?
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. My name is April Williams, and I moved to Georgia about a little under a year ago. And I am currently in the process of seeking a reciprocity for my RN license. And I submitted my application back in April, and I submitted the incorrect transcript because I am a master level nurse. I was supposed to submit from the very beginning that my initial transcript that licensed me as a nurse. I resubmitted that within a week. I resubmitted it electronically and, well, twice electronically and once through mail. I am still pending. We're June 26th. What have I experienced? I have experienced just a lack of communication. Why is my license still pending? They gave me 2 months to resubmit everything. I did that. I've made several calls, sent emails, and what is done intentionally is you will send an email, you will get a response, but there is no way for you to reply to that email. This is done intentionally. Intentionally. My question is never answered. I am unable to get anyone on the phone. You call, and you are initially when I started calling, you couldn't even leave a message. There was no callback option. But as of lately, he is correct. You are able to be placed in a queue that will call you back in 2 days. Do not expect a call back the same day. If you call on a Friday, forget it. They're never calling you back. You have to start over Monday. Okay. I live here in Byron, which is not very far from here. I asked 3 different times, can I please come in? I have an official copy of my transcripts. Can I come in with them? Can I come in and speak to someone? I have questions about completing this application. 3 times I was told you cannot come in the office. There's no one here to help you. Today I was told that there is an option for you to go in the office, but 3 times I was told you cannot. I definitely agree the workers need to be back in the offices. They need to go back in the office because when you are able to get someone on the phone, you can tell they're not engaged. They're not engaged. They're overworked. They're not happy. They're not helpful. They offer you no suggestions, no insight on what you should do next. Now, my question is, when will they get back to my application? I sat here, I listened to him speak, and he's gone. That says a lot. It was too hot in the kitchen for him. Meanwhile, I am still waiting. I have a family to feed. I have a mortgage to pay. I went to school the right way. I didn't cheat my way through anything. So now, you know what I have to do? I have to go back to California and work on a contract assignment until I figure out what I'm going to do. And he left. What does this boil down to? Across the board, there's no accountability. That's the culture. That's the culture. No one's holding the staff accountable to push this stuff through correctly, efficiently, timely. There's no accountability. I'm going to show up and I'm going to get paid no matter what. They took my money. They took my time. I can't get it back. I mean, I sat here and I watched him get his backpack and walk out. What needs to happen? Trim the fat. He had so many excuses here. He had so many excuses. I watch all of you give him great options, great choices. But he had an excuse for everything. Trim the fat. You need to make short-term and long-term goals in tandem to get these applicants through. The system is broken. I thank you guys for listening to me speak. I have to get back to work now.
And this,
I was going to say thanks, Mr. Williams, and I hope that you've seen that that's kind of why we're here. And we
I
know your
appreciate it.
frustration, and hopefully you don't have to go to California to work, and hopefully somebody here can help you that's still here,
Thank you.
Maggie.
I appreciate it. Thank
You
you.
mind leaving us before you leave your contact information? I know you're going to grab somebody. I can already see them coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Juliana McConnell. Yes, and I happen to know her. Okay, so let her talk for us. Okay. Colleen Howard. Y'all, Colleen grew up with my oldest daughter, very close, and she has an issue, and she actually approached me last week. So glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad I'm here too. I often ramble, so I had a whole thing written out, so y'all bear with me. My name's Colleen Howard. I'm in the process of applying for an associate license as a marriage and family therapist in the state of Georgia. Grew up in Georgia. I went to Tennessee for college for my undergrad and graduate program at Trevecca Nazarene University in Nashville, and I graduated with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy in December of 2020. TNU's program is accredited by the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Programs, otherwise known as CACREP, In order to obtain licensure in Georgia, I was required to obtain more additional hours of clinical hours and supervision hours due to the differences in requirements between the two states. Before I submitted my first application, I was considering applying for position as a school-based mental health counselor at West Barnes High School in Dexter, Georgia. I inquired of the board if this would be an acceptable position in which I could obtain the remainder of my clinical hours to apply for associate licensure. I was informed that the board, quote, does not provide pre-approval or pre-review of eligibility for licensure, unquote. Therefore, I had to submit my application with all the necessary fees to the board before they would even approve my place of employment. I chose to apply for and eventually accept this position as a school-based mental health counselor. I submitted my first application in 2022 for a license as an associate marriage and family therapist. I was sent a deficiency letter due to not having enough clinical hours and supervision hours. After speaking with my supervisor, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, she encouraged me to send a letter to the board requesting an extension of time to obtain the remaining hours. I sent a letter via email to the board and I never received a response, email or letter. My application was ultimately withdrawn. In 2023, I attempted a different route to obtain licensure by applying for an associate license as a professional counselor. As mentioned earlier, the program I completed was KCREP accredited in most schools in Georgia for clinical mental health counseling, or KCREP accredited. I thoroughly read through the board rules and I was certain my application would be accepted. I was denied again. In 2024, I emailed the board a question. It was over a month before I received a response. I submitted my most recent application for Associate Marriage and Family Therapy on April 25th, 2024. I received notification via email that my application was received and the check I sent for my application fee was cashed on May 3rd, 2024. On May 22nd, I received a deficiency letter because even after combing through the application numerous times, I failed to sign one part of the application, a part that was not required to be notarized. Eager to remedy my oversight, I submitted the appropriate and corrected documents the same day I received the deficiency letter, May 22nd, 2024. The board website states that once you receive a deficiency letter and you send in your documents, the 20 business day processing time begins again after they have received your documents. I received an automated email response stating that my email had been received, and I'm going to read the automated response because I think it's important. Thank you for your email correspondence. We are currently experiencing an extremely high volume of calls, emails, applications, and documentation. With the high influx of licensing applications and documentation and the continued restraints due to COVID-19. We are currently focused on processing applications and related documents as quickly as possible. If your application is deficient, then you will be sent an email from a licensing analyst when they reach your application in the date order it was received. Our goal is to return your emails and calls within 5 business days, although this is not always possible. And then they go on to say, please don't call or email the board office to check on the status of your application during this peak licensing season. And I've also received an email before, 2 years prior, that it was also a peak licensing season. So I don't know when is the opportune time to submit licensing. It is now June 26, 2024, 23 business days after I submitted the correct documentation, and I have not received correspondence as to whether the form I submitted is correct. I've also checked my application status online through the Secretary of State's online portal for applicants numerous times. Even while I was sitting here, I checked again just to make sure my application is still incomplete. If I don't have the corrected documents in by July 26th of this year, my application will be withdrawn. And I don't know if it's correct because I haven't received any correspondence as to whether it is or not. I contacted the board. I gave them the 20 business day grace period. That's including Memorial Day. I didn't count that one. I didn't count Juneteenth. So there's 20 business days. I contacted via phone about the document. I was placed on a callback list in the queue, so not able to leave a message. And I called around 10 o'clock yesterday. 5 business days minimum is lengthy to receive a return call when it's something that's urgent and your time is running out. Last night I also emailed particularly the licensure analyst that sent me the deficiency letter, just inquired about the document just to make sure that I did everything correctly on my end. I've worked diligently to ensure that I've met all the requirements and obtained the required documentation to qualify for associate licensure as a marriage and family therapist. I've spent hundreds of dollars in application fees, in addition to thousands of dollars in supervision fees in order to be licensed. I will also mention the $40,000 I borrowed to obtain my master's degree. And in my current position as a school-based mental health counselor, I'm responsible for crisis referrals to the Community Service Board, implementing de-escalation strategies, safety plan development, offering compassionate support, advocacy, and care coordination involving teachers, administration, and family members for hundreds of students. Plus, I am the only mental health counselor serving the 1,300 plus students at West Lawrence High School. Obtaining licensure when having the appropriate education and practicing under direction and supervision should not be this difficult. Other incidences of note include when I have called the board in the past, I'm only referred back to the board rules, which sometimes are not presented clearly. I've also been directed to speak with the Georgia Association for Marriage and Family Therapists if I wanted to speak with someone about specific licensing issues. However, I have to pay a $50 consultation fee. Overall, this process has been extremely frustrating and entirely too difficult for someone who went to school in a state other than Georgia. My hope is that my testimony, the testimony of others, and the community will be able to propel change in this area. Thank you.
Not to make this lightly, but do you have a therapist now?
Do I have?
So your communication has been, or you've been trying to communicate with the marriage and family
Yeah,
therapist
the board of professional counselors, social workers, and marriage and family therapists.
Okay, and are they autonomous? I mean, do they work with the Secretary of State, or is there?
They're under the Secretary,
Okay.
like they're under the Secretary of State's office. But as he was mentioning earlier, there are some of those boards that do work autonomously. And back to the point of maybe there needs to be a little bit more direction.
Anybody have a question? Yes. Rick.
Have you talked to any of the board members on that?
No, sir.
Do you know any of the board members?
don't.
Have you looked them up?
I have not looked them up, no, sir.
Who's your legislator?
I'm surprised you hadn't called me before.
Well, to the point of frustration, right? That we're at this point. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I introduced a bill to basically essentially have universal licensing for marriage and family therapists. So because it's a national compact, I mean, it's a national accreditation, it's a nationalized test.
Mhm.
The requirements are for getting a license are pretty much universal throughout the whole country. So that passed, the governor signed it. Do you have so my question is, are you licensed in Tennessee?
I'm not licensed. I did my degree work in Tennessee,
Okay.
but moved back to Georgia, so I don't have a license in either state.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Colleen. Hopefully we can help you get this resolved. Julianne.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this committee, and thank you to the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker for actually forming this committee. Very needed. I would like to say something that before I start, to reflect on when she mentioned something about we have the boards, and yes, each one of the boards are appointed by the governor, but they do have an executive director who works, directly with the board, who is hired by the Secretary of State with oversight over that executive director. And that's who, whenever I need to a question and have to have something I need to ask either the composite medical board, the Board of Nursing, or the composite board that she was referring to, I typically will call the executive director to work directly with them, who is under the oversight of the Secretary of State. Okay, my name is Juliana McConnell, and I actually represent the coalition of APRNs under UAPRN, and the deans and directors of the nursing schools. They have their own association, and I represent them. And I represent an organization called the Georgia Nursing Leadership Coalition. I also represent the licensed professional counselors. which they are under the composite board, as she mentioned, that is the licensed professional counselors, marriage and family therapists, and social workers. All three of those disciplines under the same board. So then we have, and right now, as far as licensed counselors, I just called, and we have around 11,000 licensed counselors in Georgia with active license. We have around 182,500 right now active license for nurses, by far the largest licensing board under the Secretary of State's office. And of those, 18,000 are APR, advanced practice nurses, that I directly represent. So what we did last year when I think Senator Walker mentioned, we had several study committees that we worked directly with last year. And we have so many different nursing associations and organizations. What we did is we came together under the Georgia Nursing Leadership Coalition. So we had representation from those various organizations, all except for one of our licensing boards, and that was the one that has the nurse anesthetist. Okay, but we came so that we could speak with one united voice, and whenever we testified at all of these various study committees that were going on, we got together and we pulled together our issues, and then we took just representatives to each one of those. And that's what we'd like to offer to you again, so that you don't have a half a dozen different nursing organizations reaching out to you. And if there's an opportunity, if you need any additional information or you need someone to speak at any of your upcoming meetings, that way you have that one organization with the input from all the other various nursing associations. We also had several of the universities that even came, since I represent nursing deans and directors. So we want to extend that, to you. We right now, we work directly, Tara, who is the executive director for the nursing board, we work very closely with her. I've been texting with her. I talk with her sometimes several times a week, and she is doing a phenomenal job. But of course, the problem, as we mentioned earlier, goes back to them having the resources, the number of individuals there, working under that board of nursing. I asked her I called this past week too. I said, told her I was coming to this meeting to give me kind of some numbers so that we could see what we're dealing with right now. Okay, because we're in the season, see, with the nursing board, okay, nurses, like right now, May was was when majority of your nursing schools, when they graduated nurses. Okay, so then that's when, once they graduate, then that's when they're trying to get their license. And they must take it's called the NCLEX test. They must take that test and pass it before they can meet all the qualifications to get their license through the nursing board. Okay, they have, as of May, they had almost 5,000 applicants with nurses that had graduated. Okay, so they're trying to get right now with the staff they have. They have 6 licensed analysts and two additional ones that deal just with APRNs.
Is this the board, or is this the Secretary of State's licensing division that handles this nursing?
This is the Board of Nurses, the staff that works for the Board of Nursing that handles the licensing for the nursing board, that are staff members of the Secretary of State.
Didn't we increase that staff budget?
Yeah, the budget, it was not directed specifically to the boards. It was like 1.4 million that went to the Secretary of State's office, but there were several areas that they could use those dollars. And I understand that they are, putting additional staff. They said they may get like one additional licensing person, but it's not specific because they got all the licensing boards that the staffing dollars have got to go to. But the Board of Nursing, remember, we've got by far, with the over 180,000 nurses, by far is the largest licensing board. Now, when they graduate new students, you can imagine in May, in May and then again in December are the 2 larger time periods when they've got to then get these new graduates licensed. okay, I talked with one of your universities, and I won't call their name, but they said they had one of their students graduated in May. They must then, once they get all their information that's required by the Board of Nursing, but they must pass that test, and they have to get it's like a authorization through the Board of Nursing of what time when they can take that test. This individual graduated early May. They cannot sit for the test until August. Okay, so when here they are with their degree, but and who is going to also be able to even who's going to hire them if they don't even know that for sure they're going to pass the test in August. They're taking the test in August. Once they pass that test, then they've met the last requirement. Then they can get their license and then hopefully go to work. But just having to wait from early May until August before they can even sit for the test.
Is that simply the delay simply because of the large number of people that have to take the test?
Right, because they got over 5 right now. As of June 20th, they had 4,974, almost 5,000 applicants, and still maybe some additional ones coming in. So because they've got to fill out the forms and get their transcripts, but that's just as of June 20th, new applicants. Now, and then in addition to that, that's the new applicants getting their license in May and December when most of them are graduating. But then all of your nurses have to get their license every other year renewed. Okay, so you've got 182,000. That includes LPNs. Every December 31st, they've got to renew their license. Okay, so and they start the renewal process in September. So if you take half of that, 90,000 nurses trying to renew their license during that one period of time. They got to do it by December 31st. And with around 6 analysts that are trying to handle that process too. And all of it right now, of course, we're hoping with the new, as you heard, the nurses are going to be the last licensing board that they will implement the new goals process. And because I think it will help at least to have it automated, because they said that I just also talked with like your licensed counselors, with their board. And they said they had during this, in the 3 weeks in May, they had received 489 applications. They had processed 342 of them because there was issues with the application itself. Last week, they had 69 applications, and they only had 9 that were filled out correctly the first time. So, but hopefully, like we said, with the new automated process, this will help expedite the process.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Now,
excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just for clarification, what I'm hearing you say is that every year around May and December, we expect a lot of, that's graduation. So we expect these applications to come in. This is nothing new.
No.
This is every year.
Every year.
Okay.
But now remember, you're encouraging and y'all are doing, especially the General Assembly, with the workforce development, we have a nursing shortage. So y'all are helping to hopefully incentivize and help to increase those numbers.
And that's what we want to do. I agree
exactly.
with that.
That's what we want to do.
However, they still every May
and December,
we should be expecting an upload, a surge, correct?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess my question is, knowing that,
yes,
for years, have we not adjusted to that, i.e., those who already have license that need renewal, they have a different period than that time frame we just talked about when we expect a lot of graduates to come.
Exactly.
That way, the workload is maybe spread out. I would venture to say.
Right. About September, December is when you're going to be doing the new license, half of them every other year. Now, there was an increase in nursing news applications from last year, increased around 500 from last year. And that's what we want, right? We want to have more and more nursing students graduating.
I think what Representative Prince is asking, Chair Prince is asking is, if you are getting a renewal,
Uh-huh.
are you renewing in May and December, or are you renewing on some different schedule?
No, the May and December is for the brand new nursing students getting their license for the first time. Once you get your license, every other year you have to renew it. And renewals are due December 31st. Okay, but they can start renewing around September. So September through December is when the Secretary of State, when the Board of Nursing, when they have that increase when they're doing the renewals only, renewal license.
I've got a way that they could fix some of this. Instead of the board giving the test, let the college where they're getting educated give that test. Then they have a complete package that goes to the board that they've passed all tests. They've passed this as an exit test. This is not rocket science. This is just breaking down.
Well, the Board of Nursing actually assigns a date. There's another body that actually implements the test. The Board of Nursing doesn't implement. It's called the NCLEX test. And I don't know that much about it because
That the professional
but I
licensing
understand what you're-
boards contract with another company because professional licensing boards used to give their state test. They
Right.
quit. But this test could be administered at the college as soon after they graduate, then they could come back and take that test at that college and not be 5 months later taking that test.
Yeah. And
It's going to be a
Actually,
rule change that we're going to have to force that board to do.
Are there any states that approve a license for nursing pending, I think, is it the NCLEX? I'm going to mess up whatever the acronym of the test is, pending the approval of the test. So you have everything else done, awaiting your score. Are there any states that you know in your practice representing different nursing associations that do it that way?
I don't know. That's something we could certainly look into. Since I'm just focusing right now on Georgia, I'm not. Anything we can do though that would help the process, and like I said, and again, I have no criticism whatsoever working with the executive director and the Board of Nursing themselves. They are working extremely hard, and they work great with us. It's just the dollars and they don't have the resources and the staffing. And then, like you were saying too, when you have it, then May and December, and then in September through December, that's when you're going to have the influx of the new graduates as well as renewals. But I tell you, but a greater issue that let me ask.
I was going to say, corporations like Pearson VUE administer those tests, licensing exams throughout the year too. So some of these grads could, I think the nursing board could send that through a corporation like Pearson VUE and administer them on the campus. There's Pearson VUE testing centers all over the state.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be an answer as well.
But a greater issue, and I know, and Senator Walker, you mentioned it in your opening comments today, a greater issue that we have facing the nursing right now is, and we have a crisis. I mean, we've said it, and we're working as hard as we can with the composite medical board and with our APRN, with our protocol agreements, which is a licensing issue. We must, a physician and an APRN, they complete, which is now, I had copies of it. It's now a 9-page document that they must complete for their protocol agreement with that authorizing physician. It must be filed with the composite medical board, and it must be processed there. They basically review it to make sure that it is completed properly and it meets the requirements. We right now have nurses that have APRN protocol agreements outstanding. Senator Walker, not just less than a year. We have them over a year outstanding. So we have APRNs out there that they must have that protocol agreement processed through the composite medical board in order to get a DEA number. And we started collecting. Our association reached out, and just the ones we could collect, we have over 350 APRN protocol agreements that are outstanding. We've got a few outstanding, almost 2 years. We've reached out to the Composite Medical Board. They have a new executive director. He is trying his best. He is. We've met with him several times. But with that process, since we do have to, we have APRNs, you've got to be, you work under the Board of Nursing, you have to RN license now, thanks to Senator Walker and the rest of you. We now have an APRN license that will go into effect next year. But then we got to go over and work with the Composite Medical Board and with these protocol agreements, and I know that's not falling under your purview, but it is still a licensing issue. And right now, with hundreds of them being outstanding, it's taken, even when you file it, months and months to get that process through the Composite Medical Board.
Well, and like you said, they got a new director, and I know he's working on it. And,
Yeah.
And we hopefully he'll get a grasp on that.
But,
what else?
But we would look forward to working with you on anything that we can with the under the Board of Nursing and the licensed professional counselors. Theirs is handled a little bit different. So, but whatever we can to, because we need more counselors with the mental health, and we certainly need more nurses. But until we get our process in place where they can get these licenses and get jobs, because some of them are losing jobs if they can, they have an offer, but if they can't get that license, they can't start to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got one more person to deal with the nursing, and then we'll get to, yeah, they're still here. Okay. Lisa Newman. Lisa here.
My daughter just finished nursing school at Gordon State. Finished top of her class, got a job offer from Atrium, was scheduled to start last week. She took her NCLEX yesterday in Savannah because that was the only opportunity she could do. Took her forever to get the fingerprinting, all of the applications through. She went to the licensing board physically here in Macon 3 different times and asked, where's my application? Why is it not getting approved? It was past the said days, didn't count the weekend. You've heard the testimony from everyone else. Same kind of story. So now she's waiting on the results from the NCLEX. Her job has been delayed. I don't think they're going to take the job from her. But she is now in a position where she scheduled out her start date far enough in advance, expecting the process to work as it should have. It goes well beyond the 18 quoted days that I heard Gabe mention earlier. And it's the same issues that the other two ladies just spoke about with the nursing and getting the examinations done, getting them scheduled. It's just a disaster. These ladies and gentlemen go to school. They work very hard. They're excited when they leave. They've passed a number of different rigorous curriculum requirements, and they can't get a license. And so to the point, there are shortages of nurses. The process is broken. So that's all I have to say about the nursing. And I will take a seat and I will be called again. I have a general contractor and licensing issue.
Good. Go ahead.
Okay. My husband has been a licensed contractor for 10 years, residential contractor. I do our compliance. I have a compliance and regulatory background, and so I've done that for off and on for 20 years. So I'm well acquainted with how municipalities structure their government organization. Macon has historically, I've been here since 1981, has historically not been well run in some of those areas. The problems that we've had with the licensing board are similar to what other people have mentioned. You call, you get somebody that's at home, their dog is barking, their baby is crying. Someone's at the door, the TV's in the background. They're apathetic to whatever you have to say. They are unhappy, they are unhelpful, and oftentimes they're rude and short. When you can get a call back, because I've actually received some callbacks, I've occasionally received a call back from someone who was moderately polite, but unhelpful. They do not have access or authority to get into the system to see information that you're asking about. And so they're basically ill-equipped to be able to do their own job. So whether it's they don't have authority or they're just poorly trained or they're just incompetent, I'm not sure. It could be a combination of all of those things. But I have run into problem after problem after problem. My husband applied to do a residential light commercial license in 2022 and was approved in July. Our house was struck by lightning and burned down the next month. And so we were displaced. So we withdrew the application. We reapplied for the application and they sent us a letter and said, well, you're deficient in these areas. Now, this is a long application, okay? So go back through the whole process. They send you an email. They tell you, there's something wrong. Well, sometimes it's a monitored email. So I reply back and I say, okay, great. Thanks for the feedback. What can we do to remedy this problem? We feel we've provided sufficient information based on your law. Oh, well, we can't tell you that. If you can't figure it out, we don't have any help for you. Now I have that email right here, okay? And I want you to understand that on 2 different places on the application, it references Georgia law, which I brought with me, okay? This is for section 4 of the application. This is for section 2. This is education experience. This is work experience. They are worded in such a way that it's very difficult to understand, even for someone who has an education. So I can imagine that someone who is trying to obtain a license to do a job so that they can earn a living for their family would have similar issues. I felt, fairly confident to get through the process because I do compliance. I look at this stuff all the time. So I didn't feel like that was a problem. But the problem I had was none of my questions were addressed in the email. And what it said was, thank you for contacting the professional licensing board with your concern. Unfortunately, this office is not permitted to explain the requirements of your chosen profession, of which profession should be chosen. We offer as much assistance as permitted to the applicant. However, the onus is on the applicant to understand the requirements, laws, and rules. I didn't ask that anymore. I simply said, what additional information would you like? Because we provided more than you requested. And you're telling me it's insufficient. And now you're telling me I'm too stupid to understand the law. And you can't help. That process was initiated in June of this year. We finally got approval in November to sit for that examination. Okay? After they sent us an approval letter that had our old application number on it from 2 years prior. So guess what? PSI, the examination testing association that's contracted with the state, and I'll address their issues in a minute, couldn't find the application. When I gave them the correct number, they said, no, that's not the one we have. I said, I know, the one you have is 2 years old. And the board would not reinstate the previously approved application. They made us repay, go back through the entire process again. And it just went round and round. So 5 or 6 months later, finally received approval, multiple phone calls to PSI, multiple visits, physical visits to the board office down here to get it all straightened out. Fast forward, my husband goes to sit for the exam with PSI. Goes into the exam, hands him a set of blueprints, and the exam blueprints have been photocopied so many times he couldn't see the numbers. Now, because he's been doing this for over 20 years, he knew how to get the measurement. Put the correct answer down, they told him it was wrong. When he came out of the exam, they said, well, didn't you know that you should tell us about the blueprint being illegible? No, never taken that exam before. How would he know that the materials that he was given were not the correct material? So he raises a concern. PSI says, no problem. We'll let you sit for that 4-hour exam again, and we won't charge you for it. So my husband takes 4 more hours out of his day and goes back, same office, gets a set of blueprints, gets his exam, goes in. They gave him the wrong blueprint for that particular exam because there are 2 parts. Okay. So he makes a note and he tells them, he said, look, none of this is matching up. So of course he fails the test twice. Okay. Somebody who's been doing this forever brings 15 books to an exam. Some of those questions on that exam, which I'll address, Some of those questions can be found, the answers can be found in more than one trade book. Each of those trade books gives a different answer. Each of those different answers are represented for that question. Which one's right? Doesn't seem like there's any continuity in whoever creates the exam, doesn't match it to the actual trade. My husband doesn't need to know whether or not sheetrock on a wall and how it gets seamed together. He needs to know how to hire an appropriate person to do it. He needs to know what the code is, and he needs to be able to do his job in that manner. But he doesn't need to know the specifics about how to do and hang sheetrock. But that's a question. And the answer isn't actually in any of the books, the one they wanted. So PSI being so generous allowed him to take it again. So he spends 4 more hours. This time they register him for 2 parts, the contractor exam and the business law, which he's already had. He didn't bring any business laws books with him, so he had no way to reference any of that material. So he failed again. Somebody that's been doing this for 20 years. He knows this business. He knows the code. The process was cumbersome, to say the least. The testing agency seems ill-equipped. The examination is not reflective of what the actual profession and the trade should be doing. And to get through these processes and to take the exam, so he finally just threw his hands up and said, look, there's been 3 mistakes. I'm not doing this again. So now he's not going to sit for the exam, and he's not going to achieve a higher level of licensure simply because the process is ridiculous. So that's been our experience. We've talked to other contractors who had similar experiences. And the final thing I'll say about the board that approves applications, I don't know anybody on there personally. I know who they are because I've looked them up. I've tried to email them. Do you know how many people emailed me back? Nope, just 0. Nobody. Not a single one of them is a contractor. Not a single one of them has worked in this trade, but yet they hold a seat on a board and they're given authority to approve applications for people who want to do this job. So I don't know how you address those issues or what you do with my information, other than just take it and feel sad for me. But that's, one of the things I wanted to bring, to light, that there are some definite challenges. I don't know if it's here locally. PSI should be fired. They should not be allowed to continue to take money from applicants, and certainly should not be charging, our state Secretary of State's office for their services, because they are woefully inadequately educated on how to perform their job. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And
thank you. I think hopefully your resolution begins now with making this apparent to us. And I think probably everybody up here, we didn't experience your frustration, but we're feeling it right now. And I don't see how you did that without losing losing it. But anyway, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Thank you. And the final is in the contracting world to Matt Mosley and Lori Sumner.
Afternoon. I'm Lori Sumner. This is my son, Matthew Mosley. Matthew has been going through pretty much the same struggle that everybody has talked about here today. His experience started in 2021. He has been not trying to get his license. He's working toward that. He's trying to take the exam, the test that he needs to take. And so far, his application has been sent back, rejected. You call, you can't get any information from them. They don't seem to care to try to help you. They're rude. They don't reply back. They don't email you back. I can't tell you because I take care of all of this for Matthew because he's trying to work and build a business. So I can't tell you the hundreds of dollars that he has sent to these people. Application fees upon application fees upon application fees. Money to overnight it or send it where it has to be signed for, and they have been signed for, and they say they haven't received them.
This is TSI. Is that-
No, this
Oh,
is the license. The licensure by examination, their application that you have to
Can you tell
fill
us which
out.
board?
Yes,
Will you tell us which board we're talking about?
electrical. And so since December 23rd, Matthew has sent in, it's a 3-page application that he has to go through. And it's a lot of paperwork that you have to go around and get other people to fill out, not just him. You have to get them to notarize it, pay for a notary. One of the applications got rejected saying he filled it out himself. Two of them.
Could be what?
He filled it out himself. I don't know how that would happen. The person that filled it out is my brother. My brother's the one that taught Matthew. He has over 10,000 hours of electrical experience. He has been working in the electrical field since 2007. My brother has a business, owns a business, an electrical business, filled out the application, had it notarized, had to present his license, signed it in front of the notary, and they said my son filled it out.
So did you take it to the office, or was it mailed or scanned, or how did that?
We have mailed it and made sure that they had to sign for it. I didn't just throw it in the mail. They had to sign for it.
One of them has been electronic.
Yes. But, it has to be notarized, so you can't just send it electronically. So it's like you're dealing with kindergartners, going through all this process. And my brother has filled it out numerous times and is refusing to fill out the application again. He's talked with them over the phone. We've had conference calls with the people in this office. Myself, my son, and my brother on the same line with them.
Just to make clear, your brother's not filling out your son's application. Your brother's filling
No,
out
my
the
brother's
reference
filling
form.
out his part.
The reference
His
form
part,
that he has
yes,
to
sir.
fill out. Just wanted to make
His
sure.
part. And so now Matthew has to have this application yet again completely filled out, a whole list of information that I've had to go all over town to pay money for. I spent almost $250 yesterday collecting more information, same information we've already mailed them, and had to pay for it. Another application fee, because if he doesn't send it in, even though they tell him he doesn't have to pay that application fee, if he doesn't send it in, it's going to get rejected.
It has to be done by.
And it has July the 9th. My brother has Bell's palsy right now. He's going through some medical issues, and he's not able to do that. So where are we at? I don't know what else to do.
Original application.
Yes, we requested the original applications to come back so we don't have to keep going and getting them notarized, filled out, signed, all this stuff, jumping through all these hoops all the time. And we never get them back. We're just wasting money. We're spending money. They're getting rich off of people with application fees. So, I'm very frustrated. He's very frustrated. He's working very hard to establish a business. And he can't even get the test to get his license since 2021.
Where do y'all live?
Jessup, Georgia. We drove 3 hours up here today. We were made aware, of this, and I wanted to come because I really would like to go over there, but I'm hearing that it's useless to go to their office. So I don't know. I'm just like them. We're all frustrated. We don't know what to do. So, I can't get it, all the information back to them that needs to go back to them once again. I can get most of it, but I can't have my brother to fill his part out again. He's not medically able to do that right now.
The main part they want back.
The background and
Have all.
I have all the background information. I have everything else that they need. Everything that they've requested, but I want to refuse to have to fill it out again and have somebody. It makes me look incompetent, him incompetent. It makes the department, these people up here look incompetent. I mean, do you have any suggestions?
I'll say that I'm sure everybody
What I
here
can
is going
do.
to say I'm sorry. I hope that the young lady on the front row can help you today. Hopefully, since you're here, and hopefully that office is in Macon, maybe they can get a resolution today. I hope. Thank you.
It's sad. Is all I can say. I would like to say one thing that was mentioned earlier by the first girl that was up here. Mentioned local service offices. Would probably help these poor people that are in the medical field trying to get their license. If you had a small office like that for stuff like this that you could go to and not have to worry about it, and it takes it away from that. So, that is a good suggestion on my behalf, but other than that, I don't know what else to do. I just can't keep
We
running
understand.
around town.
We understand. Thank you, and I think Maggie can help.
Okay, thank you.
But we don't have anybody else signed up to speak. Is there anybody that didn't sign up that would like to say a few words? I've got some requests to speak offline. Fine.
Sure, I don't mind. First of all, thank you for being here today, members. Thank you for coming, Mr. Speaker. I think for those of us who operate in government a lot, we know it's a lot for you to get an hour of your time, and to have 3 hours of your time shows your commitment to this topic. And I want to tell you thank you for that. I know the Senate shares your concern, Lieutenant Governor. We expect to hear more of these stories. Some of the ways we can help handle the one-offs is by you being here. We appreciate you being here. Sorry for the time you have to spend. Sometimes this is the best way we can help directly attack your issue. I do appreciate Maggie for hanging around from Secretary of State's office. And we will stay with her until all of your questions are answered today. That's my commitment to you. For those of you who are on boards, you've heard the comments today. I can't speak for every member here, but I think that our position will not be which boards should be eliminated. It will be more. We've got 85 boards and 85 professions and 42 other boards. I think you will see us take a position to justify the board, not tell me which one should go away. That did not answer our question today. Probably going to have to look at justify why you're there. So if you think it's one you should justify, you probably want to get in touch with one of these board members and let them know. For those of you who have watched online, I have no idea how many that is. I know it's been several. Been quite a few based on the text that I've seen us get. Please know you're heard, and your frustration is matched by those who are here. And Chairman Hatch, I appreciate the time you devoted to help resolve that. The ideas that we bring may cause more frustration in the short term, but it's not something that we expect to be resolved overnight, although I do not think there's any way you won't see legislation to affect this thing.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be July the 25th. We don't know exactly where yet, but it will be July 25th. There is a survey / portal being put online. It will be under the legis.ga.gov website under committees, special committees. You click on this committee and you'll be able to can access that survey. So it is not live yet. They are working diligently on it. So that will be open out there for the public to give us more comments. No further information. Good for the order. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Glad I came.